From the NFL Combine in downtown Indianapolis, you're listening to the Fan Morning Show. Here are Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Jeff Rickard.
Well, I like the Combine, but I'm not that sick of an individual that still wants to be there here a week later. Good Tuesday morning to you, Kevin Bowen, Jeff Rickard, James Boyd in studio on Monument Circle. We are nearing the start of free agency, and as pretty much has been the case, I feel like every Tuesday here in 2025, it is a very busy hoops night. We'll have you covered for that. Rick Carlisle, as usual, Tuesdays at 8 a.m. with him. Boys, the show ended yesterday. I go down to the basement to attempt to get one drip of sweat, of perspiration, and all of a sudden I hear the bouncing basketball.
Oh, here we go.
And I'm going to say I heard the nets more than I heard the rim. James Boyd was getting some shots up yesterday post-show.
Yes, I was. The most Indiana thing ever is that there is a little court in the basement of the radio station. So, sent the photo to my dad. He was like, "Man, you live a cool life." He's a proud papa.
Were you good at the ceiling level? Because I've had some people that have said, you know what, the ceiling's a little bit too low.
Or are you a three-point shot?
Are you more of a line drive shooter? Are you a little bit more of a high arcer? Are you a Miles Turner?
I feel like I shoot kind of flat anyways. I can hear my high school coach yelling at me right now for not getting lift on my shot. But you can shoot it normal. I think it messes with your depth perception, though, because you're so scared to hit the ceiling, so you almost want to shoot it flat. So when I got a little more courage in there, got a little more arc on the ball, the shot started going in a little better.
Yeah, that three-point shot in there, if you put just a little too much arc on it, it's going to come right back down on your head.
I was thinking, all the hype that I saw or heard of when I moved here, I was like, they love basketball in Indiana. Yes, they do. I am fully converted. It is very different here.
Did you see the basketball courts are up just outside the field house?
They've gone back to them?
Yeah, they took the ice down about a week and a half ago.
Well, very
put
fitting.
The courts up. I was getting schooled by a 12-year-old the other night.
Oh, yeah, you did tell us this. Okay,
I was going to go shoot just a couple of free throws or whatever. And
we were hoping that they chanted air ball at you.
No, it was just like an open gym. Like he got the rebound, it's his ball. That's how it goes.
Well, tonight, those courts will probably have a little action. It's supposed to be a nice day, first off, in the state of Indiana. And again, sectionals begin for the boys. Kyle Netterup going to join us at 9. And over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse, indeed, you will have really not a lot of home action for the Pacers here the first couple weeks of the season. Just a reminder, the women's Big Ten tournament will get underway later this week over there. Next week, you will have the men. So what does that mean? That means the Pacers are on the road a whole lot. But tonight, they will be in that building. It is Pacers and Rockets at 7 o'clock. Also at 7, Purdue and Rutgers. I kind of had forgotten that Purdue even has one senior to honor tonight. Caleb First will be the lone senior for senior night for them. And then is the late one out in Eugene. Can the Hoosiers, and I guess is the question this, can they lock up a bid tonight?
I think they could.
Is that too big of a statement to make on March 4th? Is that do Indiana State fans say, watch what you're saying there? Do you not remember what happened to us last year? Or is this a different resume, different case study?
Different conference, different resume. They've played well lately. They go and win their 5th game in a row, JB, at Oregon. They're probably in pretty good shape, maybe win one in the conference tournament just to solidify it, but I think that's probably how it's going to go.
I would agree there, but I do think if you get this is be a huge win for your resume, another quad one win. So, like I said yesterday, they have a chance to control their own destiny, which is such a cliche in sports, right? But, you're not really hoping and praying for someone else to help you. You go out there and handle your business, and you're fine. So, I'm excited about that one. I'll be up late watching it, and we'll see if Woody, again, can keep it rolling and perhaps keep his comeback campaign rolling. I don't know.
Oh, boy, that was quite the statement to make here at 7:04 on a Tuesday morning here.
I'm feeling greedy.
Kevin sat up straight when you said that.
It would be 4 in a row for Indiana. Oregon has won 5 in a row. They've been one of the hotter teams here in the Big Ten. They've had some close games that stretch, a huge win at Wisconsin. But looking forward to this one. That is 9 o'clock tonight. The battle for Khalil Ware, Oregon and Indiana. A 5.5-point underdog, IU in this one. Again, that'll be 9 o'clock tonight. Big NFL item of note today will be the franchise tag deadline. I don't know how much it necessarily will pertain to the Colts here. I would say it's fair to say directly. I don't think it pertains at all, James Boyd, to the Colts here this season, this offseason. But indirectly, what will be the word on Sam Darnold today? I think Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport had it last night. They don't expect Minnesota to use the franchise tag on Darnold, so that means they would have Minnesota being, a handful of days to try and get some long-term deal done with him. But that, to me, is the biggest quarterback domino here over the next week, and obviously Pittsburgh's situation with their 2 free agents and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. But franchise tag deadline is always a day to watch. It removes some free agents from the open market. That obviously, again, has trickle-down effect for the other teams around the league, but I would be stunned if the Colts used it themselves today.
Absolutely. I mean, this time last year, I think all of us had a pre-written Michael Pittman Jr. gets tagged. And fun fact, before I became a writer, I would never know how you guys got these stories up so quick. And I was like, oh, there's this thing called writing it beforehand just in case it happens. I remember thinking like, man, this is the fastest writer ever.
I have some pre-written things from like 4 years ago that are still sitting there. You could probably infer what those things would be, possibly.
KB, I still have the version of the Colts winning in Minnesota a few years ago before they blew the biggest lead in NFL history. So it is painful sometimes to look back.
You didn't totally delete it? You just kept it?
It's just one of those things where I was like, I wrote all these words. It would hurt me to delete this.
You should post it and just have alternate reality James Boyd articles.
Sounds like the perfect
I'd like to live in that world, actually.
Feed it to AI, see what AI has to say about it.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But I will say, though, when it comes to the franchise tag, I don't expect it to be used for the Colts at all, mainly because they don't use it that often anyway, historically. And I just don't see a player that's a free agent. I mean, their biggest free agent is probably Ryan Kelly, name-wise, and then like actual player-wise, maybe Will Fries or Dayo Odengbo. So, again, those don't scream franchise tag to me.
I think at some point today I want to hit this. There is a Colt free agent that I think I would like to see re-sign more than others.
Okay.
And
it's a good tease.
I don't know if people are just like done with him, and I don't want to act like he's necessarily lived up to where he was drafted. I think is probably fair to say, but at the same time, I think when you consider the other guys in that room and the question marks you have, I don't think it's just, oh yeah, no chance you're going to bring him back. I think it would create even a bigger need. I think you could still make a case there is a need there, but it would create even a bigger need for the Colts. So busy Tuesday per usual. Mark, I would ask if we're doing an all Indiana parlay, but considering we've been 0 here lately, or should I go counter? Should I say third time's a charm?
Yeah. What are you talking about? That's quitter's mentality, Kevin.
That's how it works in this game.
Hope. Cook it up. 10-point favorite, the Boilers over the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. The Pacers, and when Rick joins us here coming up at 8, question I want to ask him is now Houston sat a lot of their starters last night in Oklahoma City. They lost. Shea had 1,000,000 points, was Shea again, and the Rockets sat a lot of their guys. So, will there be a conscious effort from the Pacers? Obviously, you have to see what the Rockets are going to do availability-wise with a lot of their starters, but, when you have a team traveling less than 24 hours on a second night of a back-to-back, how much do you tweak your game plan to that? Do you play more guys? Do you, pick up full court a little bit more? Some questions to throw Rick Carlisle's way when he joins us coming up at 8. Indiana's a 3-point favorite, 3.5-point favorite in that one. And then the big underdog tonight, which will juice the parlay. Mark Dykton, 5.5 points. Indiana, the underdog out at Oregon.
Let's run over some ducks tonight. You see him in the middle of the street, you just veer towards them.
Okay. You say that like maybe that's happened once or
twice. No, never. Never once. I like Oregon.
Geese maybe, but not ducks, right?
No, geese will destroy your car.
I can't think of a scream louder, the father of 3 girls, than if Mark Dykton just willingly ran over some ducks here on the commute in from Brownsburg.
Figuratively speaking.
Other thing on the Pacers front, Jarris Walker did get some G League action yesterday. His lone G League appearance so far of the season. Boys, he's been the odd man out. And really, the Pacers have been healthy. Even before Benedict Mathurin, here I should say even with Mathurin out, it's not been necessarily the consistent role. Matt Mathurin, again, is doubtful for tonight. But the Jarris Walker year 2, again, I'm always torn on this because some fans are like, I don't care. All I care about is the present year and how to maximize that year. And other people are like, wait a minute, here's a top 10 pick. I want to see growth. I want to try and see development. And I would say right now, in his second season, you haven't seen with a big club with Jarris Walker.
Yeah, and I think he was the 8th pick, right, a couple years ago. It's tough to say because the team is playing so well that you can't really critique him not getting more minutes. You can critique the development and perhaps try to suggest that he should, get some better opportunities. But at the end of the day, man, this is the pros, and it doesn't always work out, even for the lottery guys. And I think sometimes we forget that, especially as fans. We love draft picks, and it's like, well, most of the time, those draft picks don't turn into those players. And sometimes it's just opportunity. I think of a guy like Aaron Nesmith. He was in Boston. He was a high pick, and it just didn't work out in Boston because he didn't get the opportunity. And perhaps Jarris follows a similar path where his most minutes or breakout season comes elsewhere. But for now, I can't really argue with, the Pacers' method so far. And then the funny thing about it, KB and Jeff, is when I look at the games or the highlights and the box score, it's like whenever they send anybody that's like remotely good in the NBA down to the G League, they just kill everybody. And then to me, you realize how big the gap is between the G League and the NBA and being a rotation player in the NBA. I mean, Jarris Walker had 20 points last night, 10 assists, 12 rebounds, triple-double, and did it like easy. And I just wonder, again, if he's going to get frozen out of that rotation.
That's the problem, KB. The rotation's going well for the Indiana Pacers right now. So what do you do?
It's largely a numbers game, but I will say this: like James just read off Jarris Walker's stat line, he had a triple-double. Is that like what Rick Carlisle wants? And like I feel like I've watched Jarris Walker 2 years into the league, and I'm like, I'm not too worried about him offensively. It's more of a defensive question. It's more of the rebounding question. It's more of, you were thought to be this potential wing defender. It's kind of been I would say probably the biggest missing puzzle piece for this Pacers team. So when he goes down to the G League, it's like, should I pay attention to the points and the assists? Obviously, you want him to be the best player on the floor. By all accounts, he was yesterday. But isn't it a little bit more of the other end of the floor where you're looking for some other things? There was part of me that was stunned when I look out of the floor in that G League game and I see Jahlil Okafor and Frank Kaminsky guarding each other some 10 years removed.
I was just happy to see Frank Kaminsky still playing.
National championship game at Lucas Oil Stadium. Literally, it'll be 10 years in April of those two battling in that, and there they are in a noon game inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So
here's the thing.
You're always kind of struck by that a few times in the G League. You're like, wait, Frank Kaminsky's now there?
So, KB, let's talk about Jarris Walker a little bit more. You mentioned the fact that he does go the triple-double, but real quickly, he goes out and he does his offensive thing and he plays all those minutes and he dominates there. Is it tough for him to then transition to coming back and being kind of a role player and trying to fit back in to that?
Well, sure. I think we'll have some audio
defensive position
that we can point to that. Yeah, I think it would be difficult, certainly. And again, when Matherin gets back, doesn't sound like it'll be tonight with him being doubtful. That's not going to be a given. But we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. If there are other injuries, can Jarris Walker slide into that? I'm Kevin Bowe and Jeff Ricker, James Boyd, Mark Dykton, of course, as always. Rick Carlisle, 8 o'clock, Kyle Neddenrip at 9. And it looks to be some nice weather here in Indiana today. Enjoy it, and thanks for starting this Tuesday morning with us right here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
Well, Tuesday morning means Rick Carlisle at 8, and it'll be a game day for the head coach as he joins us coming up here at the top of the hour. Pacers and Rockets over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. James Boyd, Houston played last night in Oklahoma City. They sat, actually, 4 of their 5 starters. Fred VanVleet, sounds like he's probably the iffiest of them all. But Dylan Brooks, the other Thompson brother, Alfred Sengun, who was an all-star this year, all sat. So I would say I sit here on this Tuesday morning curious exactly what their lineup will look like. Because I think when healthy, they could pose a lot of problems, frankly, for this Pacers team.
Absolutely. I mean, they're one of the teams that has surprised me this season. Up-and-coming team, young team, and a team that is going to be in the playoffs. And so if you can stack another win against them, I think that's great for your confidence. And on top of that, I would like to see the Pacers be more engaged defensively to start the game. They kind of got into it against the Bulls, but the Bulls are terrible, so you kind of just go through the motions and you end up winning. I don't think you can approach it the same way if Houston approaches this game with their usual or at least most of their lineup.
Benedict Mathurin still doubtful for tonight. Again, he's missed the last 2. I do want to get to a little bit of Jarris Walker, his reaction yesterday to not only playing in the G League, but what did he look like for the Mad Ants? We'll get to that here coming up on the other side. Tonight, college basketball-wise, we'll get both of the local Big Ten teams in action. Let's start with Purdue and Rutgers at 7. Jeff, what do you want to see from the Boilers here tonight?
They got to build off that, trying to get some consistency and build off that win that they had. They had the tough losing streak, the players-only meeting. Their 2 studs came through in the last game. They've got to keep this rolling and try to build momentum back heading in not only into the Big Ten tournament, but if they want to make any kind of run in the NCAA tournament, they got to start finding themselves, and it's got to be more than just one game.
Kind of reminded, they can bring back really everyone of significance. Senior night tonight in Mackey, Caleb First, too. Certainly commendable him staying in school. I think you had a lot of guys that have gone through the volatility and playing time probably leave, but Caleb First has stayed, I believe, medical degree, if I'm not mistaken, for the Fort Wayne native. So, again, that's 7 o'clock Peacock tonight. They're a big favorite over Rutgers. And at 9, it will be the Hoosiers against the Ducks, the battle for Cleo Ware. 5.5-point underdog, Indiana in this one. It might be a hair premature to say with a win you are an absolute lock, but boy, I think you would have to have bid stealing galore if Indiana were to win this game tonight and not make the tournament. Certainly a win here would not only take a step right into that direction, James Boyd, but I think also it could remove you maybe from the Dayton talk of possibly being a play-in team here when Selection Sunday occurs a week from Sunday.
Yeah, as we always talk about, it's great to get in no matter what, but it's really hard to get in that first four, and then go right back and play another game, halfway across the country. So, again, if you can do anything to kind of help yourself, get yourself that week off, get healthy, that would be huge.
And the other items of note here on this Tuesday, IU Indy, they're going to begin their conference tournament coming up tonight. Paul Casaro's boys over at Wright State. They actually beat Wright State over the weekend. They are an 8.5-point underdog. They've got to win 2 games here, both on the road, at Wright State and at Milwaukee, if they want to get to the Coliseum. So the Horizon League tournament, they play on campus for their first 2 rounds and then shift to the State Fairgrounds coming up Monday. We'll actually be out there on Monday with their semifinal action to do our show. And, of course, it is boys sectional time, and it looks like we will not get the old sectional snow that I know a lot of people think back on for years. Kyle Nedrick going to join us coming up 9 o'clock. Boys sectional action will begin tonight.
Didn't get the sectional snow because we got the freezing cold for the entire month of February.
How about today?
They owe us.
Did I see 60 today?
It's possible.
I think you did see 60 because I saw it and I was like, let's go.
Balmy outside. All right, on the other side, how did Jarris Walker look yesterday? For the Mad Ants reminder, Rick Carlisle coming up at 9 and plenty of Colts conversation. It is NFL franchise tag day. What is the trickle-down effect on that? How do you rank the Colts' needs? What needs to be a veteran need? What needs to be a draft need? We'll hit on all that here. Thanks for spending this Tuesday morning with us. Kevin Bowen, Jeff Ricker, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton on the Fan Morning Show.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, Tuesday morning. That means Rick Carlisle here in 30. It is a game day. I feel like the Pacers haven't been on the right side of the back-to-back very often here as of late. They definitely are tonight. Houston played last night in OKC. They lost last night. Several of their starters sat, so that'll be something to keep an eye on tonight. And they obviously had to travel here in less than 24 hours, so we'll see how the Pacers can take advantage of that if they can. More on Jarris Walker and his trip to the G League yesterday and what that means for him here in a bit. I did want to put a bow tie on this because I know certainly it was the talk of the town yesterday. Mark Dykton, we saw a heel incident over the weekend. Was that correct?
Mr. John Cena, yeah.
Someone said compare this in NFL terms. Can you put what John Cena did to Cody Rhodes in NFL terms?
Oh, boy. In NFL terms, would that be like if you're a Patriots fan, Tom Brady joined the Colts at some point?
I was going to say, is it Reggie Wayne going to the Patriots?
Someone tweeted out, this is every Chiefs versus Bills game. And a picture of Cena with a wry smile, and that being Mahomes.
Was it Brett Favre going to the Minnesota Vikings at the very end?
What the hell is Brett Favre doing here?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, Vikings, Packers, come on.
Yeah.
I would say favorite teams, Mark.
I would say if Brady went to the Brett Favre is Brett Favre. I would say if Brady went to the Colts back in like the prime of the Colts Patriots rivalry, that would be up there. I'm trying to think of any other ones. I don't even want to discuss Aaron Rodgers ever being a Bear, so let's not go there. But yeah, that's a good comp. That I would say Brady in his prime going to the Colts.
See how Tyrese Halliburton reacts to what he witnessed this weekend here tonight. Again,
he was
Pacers,
all about it.
He was. Pacers Rockets coming up tonight, 7 o'clock. And after this, I think it's 6 or 7 on the road for the Pacers. Franchise tag deadline day in the NFL. Don't think that really impacts the Colts. But, James Boyd, I'll throw this to you. Needs for the Colts. What do you consider needs that they need to do in free agency versus needs that they need to address in the draft? Or do you even look at it in that manner, I guess?
I look at it through that lens to a certain degree. I think that safety is probably a free agency need, mainly because I'm like, if you really want to give Lou Anarumo the best opportunity to succeed, it usually comes with, in the past, a veteran safety. So go out and get somebody that you know can play at a high level, whether that's Justin Reed, whether that's Javon Holland. Get a proven commodity. I also think that a more rangy linebacker will be a nice pickup in free agency. Obviously, you can get that in the draft. And I think that, look, throughout Chris Ballard's tenure, he has had success drafting linebackers. I'm not saying he couldn't do it again, but, again, plug and play, doesn't have to be a lot of money. Get a linebacker. And then also, last one I would say in free agency would be cornerback. Again, doesn't have to be super high end. I think if you go high, like on safety, you can just go get a regular starter caliber, someone to compete for a starting role at cornerback. And then obviously in the draft, get a tight end. Draft one of many, according to many draft analysts, it's a deep class.
Would a counter be they have drafted at tight end?
Yeah, but then my counter would be they haven't drafted Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland at tight end.
For sure.
Looking for that impact player. Nobody's been able to be that guy for the Colts
right.
at
Again,
tight
they
end.
have drafted. I mean, obviously James is spot on. They haven't drafted well at that position was what, would be an accurate statement. But I'd probably double dip in the secondary, to be honest with you. I think I'd go with both. When I look at the defensive side of the ball, I just don't feel like you have a lot of 21, and 21's pretty young, 22, 23 to 25, 26-year-old defenders that you're like, oh, yeah, that's a cornerstone piece for us moving forward.
Good point.
Maybe a Jalen Jones grows into that, continues to grow into that. Maybe Latu has some huge second-year jump. But outside of those two, boy, maybe Nick Cross. I don't necessarily – your best defensive players aren't in that age group. So that's where I'd probably try and double dip at some of those spots. Offensive line is one that I think it's time to get just some veteran depth. I actually thought with what Matt Gonzalez is a third-round pick and Tanner Bortolini is a fourth-round pick showed last year, you could pass the torch there. And then running back, I feel like, is a spot you got to draft. They've only drafted one running back in the last 4 drafts. That's kind of surprising to me. And that's Evan Hall, and obviously, he hasn't impacted yet. So running back, especially, again, as a pass catcher, would be one that I would draft.
You mentioned that the other day, and it took me back to Naheem Hines and how effective he was. And one of the things that Frank Reich did really well is I thought use him in a lot of really creative ways. And as dynamic as Jonathan Taylor has been, they need that second running back that's going to do some things when he's on the field that the defense has to account for, Kevin, and they've missed that.
Well, I've said it quite often. They just don't find easy in the passing game well with Anthony Richardson. They don't find simple, easy,
Naheem Hines was that.
methodical, boring. And, when you think about those aspects to a passing game, oftentimes they can be a dump to a running back. They can be a little bit of a Jack Doyle flavor to the tight end position. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand, really, their inability to find easy. Yeah, some of it is just the inaccuracy of Anthony Richardson and not, hitting on that stuff. But again, it's not going to be highlights on SportsCenter, but if you can start turning, 2nd and 8s into 2nd and 3s and 2nd and 2s, that would go a long, long way in, helping out your offense move the football more consistently.
I'll turn around on you a little bit, too, because we were talking about secondary cornerback. Who would you go get in free agency? If you had to prioritize, where would you go, and is there anybody specifically that you would like to see here?
Well, the depth in the secondary is noted. I mean, James brought it up, finding veterans in the secondary. There actually is some, safety and corner depth that I don't remember in prior classes. Last year was a very weird year for safety. We've brought up Javon Holland's name a lot, the safety out of Miami. Travaris Ward for the 49ers, I know is a corner name. I'll be curious to see if Minnesota franchise tags Byron Murphy, their corner, today. If they aren't franchise tagging Sam Darnold, which was some of the chatter last night, does that mean they're throwing the tag on Murphy? If not, now all of a sudden that corner group has a little bit more depth and substance to it in free agency. So, and I'd throw linebacker in there, which, we have never talked about the Colts signing a free agent linebacker. Chris Ballard has drafted historically well at that position group. But, weirdly, when you look at linebacker, you look at corner, you look at safety, I actually think there's a little bit of substance there in free agency to where, you could maybe dip your toes into all three of those position groups.
That's how I feel as well. And the thing about it is he's hit, Chris Ballard, that is, on a lot of linebackers. But I think sometimes you reach the limit of what they'll actually become. For example, EJ Speed, he's kind of overshot his success a little bit. And he's done pretty well when it comes to where he started his career as a special teamer to being a first-time, full-time starter last year. But I just don't see where he gets much better from here. I think he turns 30 this year, and so you wonder how much upside is left, and if you can go out and get somebody that's perhaps younger and, again, more rangy, because I just think that him and Zaire Franklin in particular were just picked on too much when it came to pass coverage. And, again, if you want to get off the field, you can't be relying on those guys to be something that they haven't really proven themselves to be throughout their careers.
This week in the NFL world is typically a quiet week. Again, the franchise tag deadline is this afternoon. We don't expect the Colts to use it. But for the most part, you'll get, some free agent, or I should say some pending free agent re-signings. The Packers, I know, re-signed one of their own free agents yesterday. Typically, you do see a little bit of that this week. James Boyd, anybody on the Colts in-house free agent list you would re-sign prior to the start of free agency?
Will Fries, come on down, get your bag. I think that if you're looking at potentially resetting at right tackle with Braden Smith moving on, potentially resetting at center with Ryan Kelly moving on, you probably like to keep some continuity up front and have obviously 3 instead of 2 returning starters. So I think Will Fries has earned a payday. Someone who has really kind of outshot what he was supposed to be again. Best case scenario, he was a 7th-round pick, and most 7th-round picks don't become starters, and he's a pretty good one before he got hurt last year. So I'll put him at the top of my list as far as returning free agents.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I think I'm a little bit more in the minority on this than most, but I think Dayo Odeyingbo is one that you look into re-signing. Has he lived up to 2nd-round potential? Probably not. Did he have a great contract year? I don't think so. But I think a couple things to keep in mind. He hasn't missed a game in 3 years. Look at that defensive line group and look at the injuries amongst that group. They're especially at defensive end. There's a whole lot of them. If you look at the versatility he offers, I think that is something that, he plays defensive tackle and defensive end. That's not a given across that defensive line room. And just look at the others. If you want to label him more as a defensive end, Kwity Paye's in a contract year. I think you could make the case that Dayo Dengbo has maybe had as much production as Kwity Paye in less snaps over the course of their they both were drafted in the same draft class. Samson Ebukam is coming off a torn Achilles at the age of 30. He's going to turn later this year. And then I don't want to put any more pressure on Latu's plate than is necessary. And I think if you will bring back a guy like Dayo, you could allow Latu to still kind of grow as he needs to. So I know that oftentimes you get to the in-house free agents and they're like, yeah, let all of them walk. But in Adengbo's case, considering his position group that rotates a lot, he had the Achilles back in college, prepping for the draft. You can kind of put his freshman year, his rookie year in the NFL, to the side of that. If you look at it, had a really promising year 2 and year 3. Didn't necessarily take that jump in year 4. I still think he is one that I would look into re-signing, considering the questions you have in that room around him.
I also think, James, it kind of falls into Chris Ballard's pattern of, unless it's an obvious situation, I think he likes to retain guys. He likes that continuity. He likes to keep those guys. And for all the reasons you just talked about, KB, I think that's a perfect candidate for Chris Ballard, especially to say, hey, we're gonna keep you
around.
And
let me be clear. I am not in this run it back continuity camp because I hear, people can already say that.
I was going to say they're going to grow.
But there are players worth keeping.
Well, and how do you define competition? Let's go back to that buzzword Chris Ballard used in January. I didn't create enough competition. So is all the competition just going to mean all of your guys walk out the door and then you bring in new guys, but then they get handed starting jobs? Aren't you trying to create competition? So to create it, you've got to do two things. You have to obviously have guys on your roster to compete with theoretically new guys coming into your building. So Adengbo will be a very interesting one just in general for me, James. I thought, and I don't want to read too much into Chris Ballard's words, but I guess I am. I got the feeling in listening to Ballard last week, he expects a big market for Dayo Dengbo in free agency.
I was just looking it up so according to Spot Track, which we use all the time, he's projected to net a 4-year, $63 million contract in free agency. So basically $16 million a year. I mean, he's 26, hasn't missed a game in a while. You can move him inside. You can play outside. I think it's not a matter of wanting to bring him back. It's that he's going to price himself out of Indianapolis' market. And if you tell me you're going to pay this guy north of, let's just call it $12 million a year, are you willing to do that for the next 4 years? Are you willing to do that? That's my only question, because obviously you want him back, but you want him back at a discount, and I just don't think that he's in a position to take that.
Well, that's where it gets into okay, Samson Ebukam, you've brought him up as a cut guy before. It doesn't sound like Chris Ballard is wanting to do that based off his comments last week. Would you rather have Dayo at that price tag for the next 3 or 4 years, or hear Samson Ebukam next year coming off a torn Achilles at the age of 30? Look, these are some of the discussions that I think you have to have if you're the Colts. And I get that not a lot of these answers are going to make people, cheery and uber optimistic, but this is some of the realities at a position group that certainly is going to be a huge focus, and I would argue you haven't got enough on the return on investment within that position room.
I completely agree, but at the same time, I'm just thinking, until I see the Brinks truck get backed up and dumped on somebody, I'm not really going to believe it. And I also understand that you've invested so much into the DN position. I just wonder how much more you're going to invest. You picked up Kwity Paye's 5th-year option when he didn't really perform last year. You had to do it before last year, and he had an okay season. You invested in Latu by drafting him. Obviously, you talked about Samson Ebukam coming back. So I just wonder, at some point, when do you allocate money towards other positions, or do you run it back or try to get Dayo to stay? Because I think if you can, feasibly do it, then do it. But it's always easier said than done. And then, as most people say, it takes 2 to tango. Are we sure that Dayo liked his role here?
Sure,
I mean, last year, he didn't really get a chance to put up the big numbers because they moved him inside so much. And it was remember that weird preseason game we played until the 4th quarter? And I remember thinking, what the heck is up with that? And so just little things along the way. I'm not saying that he's unhappy, but I was just wondering, we don't know his state of mind. I don't think anybody was happy with the way the season ended. I know he wasn't happy with his performance this past season, but do you want to stay here, or do you feel like other people can use you in a better way?
Yeah, Evan brings up here in the YouTube chat, this kind of screams to Nico Autry all over again. I could see where you're coming from on that. And so that, I think, is the one that, of the names on that list, I don't think many of them are as up in the air for me as this one. I mean, maybe Julian Blackmon would fall into that, but that was just a weird safety market last year where Julian Blackmon didn't re-sign until 3 weeks. I don't think he re-signed until April last season. So, again, Dio for me is going to be a really interesting one to watch next week.
Any chance that they let both those guys go?
Well, sure, but again, it's
you talk about the Achilles injury, and then you talk about the price tag and those kinds of things.
Well, it doesn't sound like Achilles-wise, Samson Ebicom, unless Chris Ballard was just reading it totally different, is going to be let go. I mean, and again, you don't have to make a decision technically on him. He's still under contract. That one sounds like,
you just let it play out.
You aren't going to have the cap casualty. Yeah. Again, all of this, I think, is still below the Braden Smith thing. What is the Braden Smith domino? What exactly is that? Is it a restructure? Are you just flat out cutting him? The Colts don't do those things under Chris Ballard. They just don't. They don't do the flat out cut and save money. Like I can't think of a guy outside of whatever Matt Ryan or obviously Carson Wentz. They walked into the miracle of the trade to get rid of them. They just don't do those things. So when you hear Ballard use his words differently, like he has in January and February, okay, what actions are different? And that's what we're about to find out. So again, franchise tag deadline today in the NFL. It's a busy night of hoops. Mark, have you queued up the three-leg parlay? What are we?
Here we go.
So
529 accounts. Beware.
Mm-hmm. Well, not rich, but
how is that 529 account going for those girls? By the way,
what does that mean? They're non-existent. Okay, so Kevin, we have not hit on our All Indiana parlay yet, but that's because we haven't thought outside the box a little bit. So,
are you bringing IU Indy into this?
No. Oh. We're not getting that crazy. But I'm just saying we've gone money lines and all that stuff, and that hasn't worked out in our favor. Last time was Notre Dame's fault, actually, for that falling flat. But if we want to just
way to go, Kevin.
I don't think Purdue helped us out on that night either, if I remember correctly.
That's true. I feel like Notre Dame started it off, though. So, if we want to go old school here, we go Pacers money line, IU money line, and then Purdue minus 10.5. This is the big money payout. That's $10 to pay out over $102 if it hits. Now, the Pacers money line, and if we're not feeling that IU is just going to outright beat Oregon, but we want them to at least cover, you get the plus 5.5, and you get the Purdue minus 10.5. $10 pays out $62. So not bad, but not as big of a payout.
I like that one.
So that's what we're looking at so far.
So 10 to win 62. Yeah, I am taking notes over here. That would be a Pacers money line as a 3.5-point favorite, correct?
Correct.
That would be a Purdue cover as a 10.5-point favorite at home against Rutgers senior night. The emotions for Caleb first flowing. And then Indiana, a 9 p.m. cover. That is a 5.5-point underdog against Dana Altman and the Ducks.
And they'll pay you just over $72.
Okay.
I think that's doable.
Kind of like that one. The thing that scares me most about the Indiana-Oregon game is how those college games get late. It's only a 3 or 4 point game, but then you start fouling a guy with 20 seconds to go, and he makes 2 free throws. Then you have to foul again after you miss a shot. Next thing you know, a 2 or 3 point game becomes an 8 or 9 point game.
Yeah, you need the Anthony.
We only want good vibes here, Jeff. I don't know what you're trying to do right now. We want good vibes.
529 account
built good vibes.
You need the Anthony Leal half-court shot at the buzzer to cover against Michigan. Mark, will you cue up this Jarris Walker audio? I thought it was something that we probably should have mentioned yesterday. It happened late in the show. The Pacers assigned Jarris Walker to the G League. First time all season that Walker has played with the Mad Ants. You do see NBA teams occasionally do this. Again, the Mad Ants play over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse yesterday. It makes a lot of logistical sense to give Jarris Walker some minutes. Even with Benedict Mathurin out, I don't want to act like he has all of a sudden played a massive amount of minutes here as of late. And with Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nemhard back to health, Jarris Walker's really been out of the rotation. Now, his stat line from yesterday, and again, this is a G League stat line, but for what it's worth, 20 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, 5 steals, 2 blocks, 6 turnovers. He was 8 of 15 from the floor. Yesterday, afterwards, Jarris Walker, courtesy of Tony East, on the G League performance.
Definitely not easy, but I have a good support system. My mental's been stronger. I'm growing in that area as well. Just trying to focus on the things that I can control, and then if I can't, just kind of rush to the side and just continue to keep my head down and work. But obviously it's not easy, but it's part of the job.
Twice in the last month, guys, he's played double-digit minutes. Again, he's pretty much been moved out of the rotation. I think when you reach this point in the season, I would argue the rotation only shrinks than grows for an NBA teams. Even though the Pacers did play more guys in the playoffs than most last season, numbers game. He should get minutes. How do you look at Jarris Walker's situation?
I look at it like it is a numbers game, and he's on the short end of the stick. And often, when you're playing really well, you can't justify giving someone else other minutes. Now, if this were the Pacers that we saw early in the season and they were struggling, and you're like, all right, just try something different, get them out there. But I really can't say that Rick Carlisle and others are making the worst decision or a bad decision by not playing him more minutes when you're playing at this high of a level, especially this calendar year. So it's a tough situation for him. I'm glad that he said his mental is strong, and I think that's what he has to rely on, honestly, because at the end of the day, you are a professional. And so I feel for him, and you do feel for the fan base too, because when you invest in high draft picks and you have those, and this is rare for the Pacers. They rarely ever have single-digit draft picks, and to have one not really get an opportunity, it's tough. It's tough.
It's interesting. You talk about shrinking rotations as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. I like the move a lot. You pick and choose your spots when he comes back and forth a little bit, but you give him minutes, you keep him confident, and if somebody goes down or you need somebody to step into that rotation, you got a guy feeling pretty good about himself that's been playing some basketball, and hopefully he can fit right back in. I kind of like what Rick is thinking there.
Yeah, we'll see how long I assume it's not going to be a long stay by any means in the G League. They're on the road for 6 of their next 7, so I don't think logistically it works out a whole lot. The Walker thing, it's just you don't have many lottery picks drafted to a team that then goes to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think you have to start there with him. Now, having said that, you drafted him thinking he would bring a skill set that I still think you have a question mark on, defending the 6'6" to 6'9" guys in the NBA. So that's where I do pause and think, yes, again, you became an Eastern Conference Finals team. Weirdly, Jarris Walker and Benedict Mathurin were both in drafts where then you took a 4-year player in Andrew Nembhard and Ben Shepherd who just make Rick Carlisle sleep better at night. And you don't, that's not a given. I mean, late first-round pick in Shepherd, early second-round pick in Nembhard, those guys don't necessarily become rotational guys. And obviously, Nembhard has been better than just a rotational guy. So it's just there's a little bit of me where I kind of shrug my shoulders and say it's an unfortunate situation with Walker, but I still can't lose sight of, wait a minute, wing defense is a question. Isn't that supposed to be what you thought when you drafted him? And why hasn't that aspect worked? Is that what you need to see? I just rattled off the stat line. Guys, triple-double in the G League, that's eye-popping, is it not?
You go in, especially just walking in with
but does Rick Carlisle care about that? I mean,
no.
Sure, I there's an element of he probably wants to see him be the best player on the floor, but when we had Rick on during the summer, all he talked about was, hey, when Jarris goes to the summer league, we want to see him play with force. We want to see him do some of the dirty work defensively. Well, a triple-double maybe is not the greatest indicator of, is he satisfying
like
that
the rebounds,
aspect of it. Certainly the rebounds. But again, it's more of the defensive end of the floor. So I think that's something we'll throw Rick's way when he joins us here coming up in about 10 minutes.
To Jeff's point, I think it's also worth noting that your roles change significantly when you go from being the focal point in the G League to being a guy who has to fit in with everyone else when you're on the regular roster and in the regular rotation. And so I wonder what's the balance there as a coach when you want him to go down and play free and play confident, but okay, you're not going to have the ball in your hands. You're not going to get 10 assists in the NBA because Tyrese Halliburton is your point guard. And, I mean, I would like to know, fun fact, maybe Scotty can get on this, is who's the last guy on the team? Probably hasn't been that long, but the last guy not named Tyrese Halliburton on the Pacers to get 10 assists in the game. It doesn't happen. And so I'm just curious to see how that translates. And to your point, Kevin, you do need the bigger wings. You look at some of the top teams in the league, Lakers, OKC, Boston, who I love to watch. They really do have all they have is 6'7", 6'8" tweeners who just guard everything. And if Jarris can become that is a great asset to have because it matches you up better with those teams in the playoffs. But again, it just hasn't really broken through for him this season.
And one thing the Celtics do have, though, in addition to those skill sets, is they all shoot the three, too.
I think Adam summarizes the Walker thing up pretty well. He goes, can we honestly say that it's better having Ben Shepherd's high floor versus Jarris Walker's high ceiling?
Right now, I'll take the floor, mainly because what you proved last year, you don't want to really mess that up. And it feels like you have this window where you have a chance to be special. And I don't know if you want to not necessarily tank that, but you don't want to tweak that too much for the sake of one player versus the good of the team. And so
I think that's a difficulty
it's hard
that Rick faces, because I would argue too, if you want that window to be a 5-year window, Walker or Mathurin have to be a cornerstone. And right now, I don't think you say that. So I think that's what makes it really difficult. I totally understand what Rick's doing. Obviously, Shepard makes him sleep better at night. I mean, that's point blank period, and there's more volatility with some of the other guys. But at the same time, there is theoretically, the missing ingredient. You were hoping that Walker would bring that. So, again, reminder, Pacers-Rockets tonight. That is 7 o'clock. As Marcus pointed out, slight favorite, the Pacers in this one. Houston did play last night in Oklahoma City. A lot of their guys sat, so I'll be curious to see if they play tonight. It's Fred VanVleet and a bunch of very athletic 6'5 to 6'9 dudes. That's pretty much, and Sengun, who has had a really nice start to his NBA career. I feel like he's had some big games against the Pacers. Benedict Mathurin's still doubtful with his various ailments. Rick Carlisle joins us next, 8 o'clock hour upcoming Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Game day, Pacers and Rockets. Not a lot of home action for the Pacers here with Gainbridge Fieldhouse occupying the Big Ten tournament. Both men and women here to start the month of March, but they will be at home tonight taking on the Rockets. And Rick Carlisle joins us now. Coach, good morning to you. Kevin Bone and James Boyd, how are you?
All good. How you doing?
We are well. You've been a busy man. Obviously, you're coaching your basketball team, but I wanted to start with the trip to Ames over the weekend. Seemed like a hell of an environment there to honor Tyrese Halliburton, Olympian Tyrese Halliburton. What was the Saturday night visit to Ames like for you?
Well, it was awesome. There was a plane that took us up there, and we left around 5:00 from Indy. Got up there, and Ames is in the Central Time Zone, so and the game was at 8:00 Central Time, so it's it's 9:00 Eastern Time, so it's a late start. But they played Arizona, and Arizona had beat them on like a 60-foot shot, a couple 2 or 3 weeks earlier. So the Ames faithful were very much looking forward to the rematch, and walking into that building and just seeing what the environment was shaping up like, an hour before the game, and then the build-up was pretty amazing. And once the game started, Iowa State's team is a veteran team, a lot of juniors and seniors, a lot of big, strong guys, a lot of maturity on that team. Play a lot of guys, go very deep, very physical, and the fan base is just tremendous. Everybody's wearing that cardinal red and gold, and it's just every positive thing that happens, the place goes absolutely crazy. So it was a great experience. They honored Tyrese at halftime, which was great. His parents were there. We got back late. We got back probably to our homes around 2 a.m. Because of the time change, and then coming back against the time change. So I was a little concerned going into the Chicago game about, we had 2 late nights in a row. We had a 3 o'clock night, 3 a.m. night out of Miami, and then a 2 a.m. night out of Ames. But we got through the Chicago game. Tyrese did play very well, and so now we're getting ready for Houston.
Rick, one of the funnier things that Tyrese said the other day was, I go back to Iowa State, they call me a legend. He was like, I was not that. So to have a player who is that self-aware, or even willing to kind of, put a joke on himself like that, how does that help the player to know that there really isn't that much of an ego, and you can talk to him about the highs and lows and things that are, I guess, more real, as he would put it, because he was not buying that he was an Iowa State legend. And I'm like, you probably are now as an Olympic gold medalist.
Well, those things do change, and Tyrese is very self-aware. He has a self-deprecating brand of humor that's pretty funny, and he sees the irony in things, and he's not afraid to laugh at himself. On the one hand, on the other hand, he's a proud young man who's worked extremely hard, and I don't know that people thought him coming out of Iowa State was going to lead to, an all-NBA type career in his first 3 or 4 years, an all-star, a couple all-star berths and that kind of thing. But he's kept things in great perspective. His parents are great people. Brenda and John are just wonderful. And, you see John all over Instagram and all over everywhere. But he's a cool guy, and they got a great family. And so it's one of the things that makes, the Indiana Pacers a special group of guys right now.
They'll certainly be courtside tonight, 7 o'clock, Pacers and Rockets. Rick Carlisle with us here on a game day. Coach, yesterday you were also courtside inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse to watch Jarris Walker in a G League assignment. Obviously, minutes hard to come by right now with where you guys are at from a health standpoint. I'm curious, when you send a player that has been a rotational guy for you to the G League, and I guess in Jarris's case, what specifically do you want to see?
Well, first of all, we didn't send him. We asked if he was interested in playing, and he gave a very enthusiastic yes, which is great. And look, this is the difference in perspective from year 1 to year 2 for Jarris, and you hope with young NBA players throughout the league. Last year it always seemed to feel like a burden to him to have to be, quote unquote demoted. That's how young players can look at it. You're demoted to the G League, and there was some uneven play, and he had some good stats at times, but he was not enthusiastic about doing it. And he has learned that this league is it's a series of learning situations, and it's not as simple as just being drafted eighth and just being given the keys to the franchise. Some things happened that were unlucky for him. We signed Obi Toppin the summer he was drafted, and then we traded for Pascal during his first year. And so, he's changed positions and he's gone through the ups and downs. But what we've seen is that there's a level of maturity this year that is, just through the roof. I mean, compared to last year. And he's kept himself ready. Young players never, it's hard for them to quote unquote embrace the hard times, but he's learned about the importance of keeping himself ready. We've really leaned into a lot of communication with him. Jim Boylan is the guy that works him out prior to games. And he's just been at a high level of professionalism this year. And look, the minutes have been tough to come by, but what he did yesterday was very exciting for everybody. All our players were there. Our coaching staff was there, our fan base. And, they see this is just an opportunity to see the potential that he has. He never had a game like this in the G League last year, but he never went to a G League game with the kind of attitude that he went to it with yesterday. And so this is great news. And the other great thing is he has played a lot this year. I mean, he's played over 800 minutes. He played a lot less than that last year. I think he played 300 something minutes, and he's already played 800, with, a little less than a third of the season to go. And he was one of the first guys that I put into the game against Chicago. So, I'm trying to keep him as ready and as tuned up and as ready for anything as possible. But just the level of professional readiness, the level of maturity, I've just been super impressed with this year.
I remember our chat, one more on the Jarris Walker front. Again, Rick Carlisle with us here on this Tuesday morning. Right before you guys went to Vegas, you joined us this summer, and you talked about Jarris playing with force. I guess now, 9 months later, how has the force that you wanted to see from him developed, I guess? And how would you kind of characterize maybe year two in his growth?
Well, he got in the game recently at the very end. It may have been the last 2 minutes or something like this. And he dove and made a loose ball play. And there was another play. There was a play in the Paris game where he ran a guy down and actually got called for a flagrant foul. But it was a hard playoff foul. And so, last year these kinds of things weren't happening with him, and they generally don't happen with young players. But when you're around a team that has become a playoff team, and we had a good run last year and won a couple of series, he's a smart guy. I mean, he sees the kinds of things that are impact plays, in not only playoff games, but games down toward the end of the season, like we're going through right now, where every possession is super important. So, the growth is there, and we know he's talented. You guys have seen his talent, but the game yesterday, there was a level of knowingness as you watched him out there in that G League game, that he was the best player on the floor, and that he was going to find a way to dominate the game. And that was just how he was doing business, and that's a big step from last year. And we were talking about the potential of him playing that game yesterday after the Chicago game, and I was talking to Chad and Ted Wu about it, and Lloyd Pierce walked in. I said, "Hey, Lloyd, I said, well, why don't we just ask Jarvis if he's interested in playing in this game instead of assigning him? When you assign a guy, I mean, that can be viewed as a demotion. And so Lloyd went in and asked him. He goes, yeah, sure, that sounds great. I'm in. So this is great stuff.
Moving ahead to tonight's game against the Rockets, one, do you have any update on Benedict Mather and Rick? And then two, what would you like to see kind of translate from that Bulls game, maybe in that third quarter, second half, into tonight's game?
Well, all these games are difficult, and I'm not sure what we're going to see tonight. I suspect that Houston sat a lot of their guys last night on the front end of a very difficult back-to-back, starting in Oklahoma City, perhaps to load up for tonight. But we'll see. We'll see. They've had some guys dinged up, et cetera. But there were guys sitting last night that weren't expected. For the Oklahoma game. As far as us, I believe Ben is listed as doubtful, and on a game day, that generally means it's very unlikely that he'll play. I actually worked him out yesterday for about 25 minutes after our practice before I walked over to Jarvis's game, and he's making progress and getting closer. We'll see this afternoon if he's if his status does change, but going from doubtful to questionable or probable on a game day is rare.
One quick follow-up in regards to the performance we saw the other day. Saw a stat out there with Tyrese, first player, I believe, in NBA history with 500 assists before he got to 100 turnovers in a season. And you've coached some of the great passers in this league, Luka, Jason Kidd. I believe Chauncey Billups was in that era for you as well. So you've been around the game a long time. What's it like to see someone continue to push the envelope forward at the point guard position?
Yeah, I mean, look, Tyrese is a great player. And what we're seeing right now is a guy that is not doing a lot of talking. He's just doing a lot of playing and working. And after, what was a difficult start to the season, he's going to be right there for all NBA again. And that's pretty meaningful. And so love the way that he's pushed through, some difficult periods early, really worked hard at his health all year long. And, we'll knock on wood on that because health this time of year is extremely and exceedingly important. And then tonight, I expect we're going to see the majority of Houston's team, and they're tough, physical, and they're, a similar situation than we are. I mean, they're right in the middle of a very aggressive playoff hunt in the West, and so every game's meaningful for both teams.
Rick Carlisle with us here. It is a game day. Pacers Rockets, 7:00, as Coach just mentioned. I feel like you guys have been on the flip side of it. You guys have mostly been on the second nights of these back-to-backs lately and traveling. Tonight, you benefit from Houston traveling less than 24 hours. I'm curious, when these games arise on the schedule, do you find yourself saying, hey, we need to tweak, and you guys already do this a lot, but do you find it wanting to emphasize it even more, playing with depth, picking up full court, trying to kind of hammer that stuff and really test kind of where their legs are at given the schedule parameters?
Well, depth is so important in today's game. That's why, guys like Jarvis being ready are super important. And so, yeah, I mean, we need to use our depth. We're a full court pickup team. Against Chicago, we were erring on the side of getting back a little more than the full court pickup because of how quickly they play. I mean, I believe they play the fastest in the league, and they had a first half that was we were down one at halftime and they had 68 points, and then the second half we were able to really do a much better job defensively. Drew Nembhard did a terrific job on Kobe White, who had really got going. White had like 20 points in 9 minutes or something like that, and then I think he had 6 for the rest of the game. So that was obviously key. And so tonight, we're going to be looking to play our game better than they play their game. I mean, they are a I think they're the top rebounding team in the league. They're the top offensive rebounding team in the league. They're one of the top 5 with time in the bonus. They were the top 4 in fouls drawn. So they're a very, very physical team. And Sengun, a lot of it goes through Sengun, who is not only a post player, but he isolates around the key area. And at the end of the game, a lot of times they throw it to him for an isolation in the 16, 17-foot area. And the guy's a beast, because he handles, he spins, he puts his body into you, he gets and ones, all that kind of stuff. And we're not even talking about Jalen Green and Van Vliet and all these other guys they have. So we got our work cut out for us, but this is an amazing time of year, and when you're part of a playoff push like this, it's a privilege, but the games are hard.
Coach, we'll end with this, and as always, we appreciate the time, especially on a game day. Yesterday was our first show in the month of March, so we played a lot of local March Madness memories from over the years, Indiana, Purdue, Butler, all of it. We had the old CBS intro theme to lead off the show. You certainly were a March Madness participant in your collegiate days. You had a lot of success with your Cavaliers in making various runs at the expense of maybe one team in Bloomington, if I'm not mistaken, during one tournament run. What is Rick Carlisle's favorite March Madness memory?
Yeah, it's probably the game in Atlanta against Indiana, because it was a grinding game. Back in those days, no 3-point line, no shot clock. So right there, you're talking, long possessions, and nobody even knew how long they were going to be. So, and I believe that game was 50-48. There was some drama in that game. We came from behind in the last couple of minutes. Kenton Edlin, my teammates, may he rest in peace. He passed away a couple of years ago. Made a steal on Dan Dockich, laid the ball in. A series of other events happened, and we were able to win that game. And it was, this was the year after Ralph Sampson had gone to the pros, and so, not a lot was expected, but we were a veteran team that got hot at the right time. We won 3 out of 4 games to go to the Final Four were one possession games. And that was a moment where everybody's mobbing each other. I was so distracted by the whole thing that as I was up there cutting the net down, I actually cut the net and then cut a piece of skin between my fingers and was bleeding like crazy and had to have stitches on my left hand. And then, I had to tape my middle and ring finger together for the Final Four game. So anyway, those are just wacky things that happened, but that was my favorite memory. It's mayhem. I've been following college basketball in Indiana this year. It's great to see IU on a run here late with an opportunity to get in. Purdue has been amazing the last couple of years, and I've been to a Butler game this year, so I'm trying to take as much of it in as I can.
Certainly, it is a special time of year. Gosh, the cutting of the left hand. Oh, unbelievable. You guys had so many close games in that run. I think, close games with Iowa and Arkansas. That was something I was struck by when I was looking up your guys' runs.
Well, we beat Iona by 2 or 3. We beat Arkansas on a game-winning shot that I hit on the baseline. We ran a play for Othell Wilson. He took a shot. It got deflected into my hands, and I just grabbed it and threw it up there, and it went in. And so we won that game. And then we played Syracuse. I think Syracuse we may have beaten by 8 or 10 in Atlanta, leading up to the IU game. And IU had played one of the most complete and amazing games I had ever seen on any level against North Carolina. And North Carolina was a really tough matchup for us. And they played a perfect game. I mean, Alford was amazing in that game. I forget all the other details to it, but that led to the matchup with Virginia and IU that played similar style games, and predictably, it came down to the very, very end.
Great time of year indeed, and the Pacers on the brink of certainly another playoff appearance and hopefully another run. Coach, as always, thank you, sir. Good luck tonight, and certainly we'll be watching.
All right, thanks, guys. Be well.
Rick Carlisle, Payless Liquors Hotline, Pacers Rockets, 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, I got a chance to look up while Rick was going up memory lane his photo at Virginia when he was on the roster, head full of hair, 6'5", looking like an athlete. And I love that he, again, similar to Halliburton, never strokes the ego too much. He tells us about his game-winning shot, doesn't leave it at that. Oh, it was kind of lucky, kind of fluky. I just tipped it in.
Kind of waited a while to get to that.
Yeah, but my thing is like,
that'd be my favorite memory I'd be telling everybody about.
Exactly. And my thing is, if I say I had a game winner, I'm telling you I hit it from three-quarter court.
Step back, 2 guys in my face.
I'm not telling you it's a tip in, but
yeah, they went boxing 1 on me with 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, I'm looking at this Rick with the head full of hair. He was 6'5", 207 from New York.
You brought up the Halliburton turnovers to him. I just did a little scroll yesterday. If you look at Halliburton assisted turnovers is what I'm getting at here. If you look at the top 5 assist guys in the league right now, Halliburton's averaging, I think it's like 1.7 turnovers. And if you look at the other guys in the top 5, it's like nearly 5 turnovers, 3.5, 4, 4.5. I mean, it's big turnover number. Like that aspect to him, the lack of the turnovers. His playmaking, his passing, all of that. Guys do that in this league.
Yeah.
There are other guys that average double-digit assists, but they couple that with a slew of turnovers. And for the most part, he has never really been that guy, and especially this year, he has not been that.
Absolutely not. And I think that's also just a gift. I think it's similar to great shooters, great ball handlers. Like sometimes you can work on something, but you just don't have that gift. I think Tyrese has a great vision when it comes to passing. And I think I threw out there last summer, and, I think people here in Indianapolis agreed, but perhaps it'll become more of a national or league-wide notion, in both leagues rather, is that you could argue the best passers in the NBA and WNBA respectively reside in the state of Indiana when it comes to Caitlin Clark and Tyrese Halliburton getting it done.
Certainly, very gifted offensive players. Again, Pacers Rockets tonight. That is a 7 o'clock tip. Slight favorite Indiana over Houston in this one. As Rick said, we'll see exactly what the lineup looks like. The Rockets sat a lot of guys last night in their loss to OKC. Mark Dykton, cue us up for a morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
Final home game inside of Mackey. You'll have a different feel than maybe Zach Edey's final home game. Caleb First is it. As a reminder, boy, Purdue can bring back a whole lot next season to their roster. They've got Rutgers, 10.5-point favorite. This is Peacock. Still playing for definitely seeding. If you look at the Big Ten tournament, they're in that range of 3, 4, 5. You get to the 5 line, then you play an extra day. So I think that would be something that they're playing for. And then tonight's 9 o'clock out in Eugene. I think it's fair to say Indiana wins tonight. They've locked up a bid. They might still be in the Dayton range if they were to lose to Ohio State and lose in the first game of the Big Ten tournament. But you beat Oregon on the road, get a quad 1 win. I think you are certainly one of 68 come a week from Sunday.
Yeah, especially considering Oregon has won 5 straight, so.
The fight for Cleo Ware. That's what tonight is. Oregon and Indiana. 5.5-point underdog. IU Indy. Their Horizon League tournament starts tonight at Wright State. They're 8.5-point favorite. They actually beat Wright State over the weekend. In boys sectional action, James Boyd will talk with Kyle Nedrip coming up at 9 o'clock.
That's right up my alley, man. I am tempted to put the car on the road to some high school tonight.
Is it Fishers Westfield tonight, or is that tomorrow? I forget if that's tonight or tomorrow.
But, Fishers is good. I've seen them a couple times.
I believe that game is tonight, and Westfield gave them everything they could handle in the regular season.
I know. I might actually, you know what? You might have just changed my schedule for tonight. And, but Fishers is so good, and this is the bad part about it, they've been so dominant that I actually don't go see them as often because I'm like, they're going to blow whoever out that they play. So they play the right way. And what's impressive about them is they don't have like a high major recruit. It's not, Greg Oden and Mike Conley. They just have a lot of good players who play the right way.
Yeah, John Anthony Hall going to Stanford next year to play football. They've got some young dudes. Jason Gardner's kid, of course, who will certainly be highly ranked. But boys sectional time begins tonight. Kyle Nenrip coming up at 9. All right, on the other side, back into the Colts discussion. How would you rank the needs? We're less than a week away from free agency beginning. It is also franchise tag deadline day in the NFL. Any ramifications for the Colts? We'll explain that on the other side. Fan Morning Show right here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Well, thank you to Rick Carlisle. That'll be up on the podcast on a game day. We always appreciate our chats, period, but certainly on a game day. Pacers, Rockets tonight. So we'll get more into the Colts discussion. Again, franchise tag, deadline day in the NFL. How would you rank some of those needs? And I think at some point we need a little Mark Dykton. I got to know. And I think, Mark, can I sit that one out? Have I earned the right with your wrath over the years to sit one out? I think it's a James Boyd.
You
Jeff
don't want to be
Ricker.
a team player.
I got to know here.
He's a star player.
I just got to know before you start, you ready for Khalil Mack to reunite with the Chicago Bears?
Do you know something I don't?
There's a lot of juice out there that's saying he'd be open to a return to the Bears.
You better unload Tremaine Edmonds' monster contract then.
How old is Khalil Mack?
He's in his mid-30s at this point, isn't he?
But I don't think he needs to be. He's indicating he doesn't need to be the star, that he just wants to go be a part of what they're doing.
He's 34.
Everybody wants the Ben Johnson
Yeah.
love right now.
Mm-hmm.
Again, franchise tag deadline coming up at 4 o'clock. James Boyd, you were kind of chuckling a bit in the break on the old Jarris Walker to the G League for a game. Whether he was, assigned or asked, or how all of that kind of goes down.
Here's my take on it, and I definitely think that Jarris has the humility to go down there and play and do what he's asked, but Rick made it very clear that they did not assign him. They asked him to do it. But my thing is, like, once you ask him, you open that door, it's probably weird if he says no. So, and part of it, I think, is not to compare myself to Jarris because I'm not playing in the NBA, but I think part of it is just playing could be therapeutic. So when I went down there like yesterday after the show and got some shots up, it was good for the mental. And I think sometimes when you're in those pressure situations, and obviously I've never been in that position, but for Jarris, your dream is to get to the NBA. And I've asked many players this. I've asked Colts players this, practice squad guys. You don't dream of being the scout team. You don't dream of being the guy who's in and out of the rotation. You don't dream of going to the G League. You dream of being the NBA star. But at the same time, you also fell in love with the game by playing. And so to go play, I think, was probably just good for him.
Well, and think about it. 5-star kid goes to IMG Academy, goes to Houston, top 10 pick. I mean, he's not used to this.
No.
Honestly, Tyrese Halliburton's high school, college career would be more, G League-ish if you want to kind of compare the two. But, by all accounts, I think Rick sounded like he's been pleased with how Jarris has handled it. And I largely chalk it up to numbers game.
I think it's the numbers game, but also so convenient that they're playing at the field house, and Rick goes in and says, hey, why don't you get some minutes and go run with these guys and see how you're feeling? And he goes out there and he dominates. Now he's feeling better about himself and rejoins the team, and kind of no harm, no foul. If his headspace is in the right place, which it sounds like it is, JB, I think there's nothing wrong with what they did.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point that you made, Jeff, is that they're just closer than they were when they were the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, and obviously playing in your backyard. I mean, you don't have to go far. Same parking spot and same locker room and things like that. So, again, you do have to exert a certain level of maturity when you're in that position, but it's easier said than done. I've asked many athletes this. I think it's one of the most fascinating questions is, like, you hear all the time, oh, just be a pro. What does that mean when you don't get your way? Like, that is hard. And I think that,
perhaps
again,
the first time in your sporting life.
Exactly, because as you pointed out, Kevin, like, if you look up any of these guys, whether it's Fever, Pacers, Colts, they were the man or the woman wherever they came from. And their resume is probably impeccable. They were the best player wherever they came from their school. And it's hard to deal with that when it comes to, again, just some of the pressures that happen when you get to the professional level.
Using Mark Dykton's old chair here, it's broken. He switched
Keep
it
it
around
down
there.
over there.
I
My
know,
God.
man.
Sounds like a circus act.
No,
I've
but-
seen from The Greatest Showman over here.
All of a sudden, chair starts falling apart. No, James, to your point, though, there's also a time when a guy goes up to the NBA, and whether he's come from IMG and had the star college career, you get on the floor and you're like, oh, everybody here is good. Oh, this isn't a given that I'm going to go play tonight. Oh, he's playing better. Not only am I not playing right now, but the guy in front of me is getting it done. There's a little bit of reality check that goes into that too. And like I said, if he's in the right headspace, which it sounds like he is, and it sounds like Rick Carlisle handled it extremely well, I don't think there's a downside with saying, hey, they're playing on our floor tonight. Why don't you just go out and run with the guys and see how it goes?
Boy, I had to, I guess, laugh a little bit inside yesterday. I'm watching that G League game, and at one point it is Jahlil Okafor against Frank Kaminsky in the post, and literally April would be the 10-year anniversary of what I thought was one of the better national title games. I know I'm biased because it happened over at Lucas Oil Stadium, but I thought Wisconsin-Duke in that national championship game was tremendous. I'll never forget walking out of Lucas Oil Stadium that night, and among the celebrations for Duke, you had Jahlil Okafor's father. That was the Grayson Allen game. I don't know if you guys remember that. Like, Grayson Allen just, like, took over in that national I mean, it looked like
didn't
Wisconsin.
Kick anybody, didn't trip anybody,
No,
just played basketball.
He behaved. He, kept his hands off of Bo Ryan and company, and was excellent. Jahlil Okafor's father, he hired, think of the leaving Lucas Oil, leaving Gamebridge Fieldhouse, and the drummers on the Buckets.
Yeah.
I think we all have seen those. Excellent musicians. And Jahlil Okafor said, "You're coming with me. We need you for the party."
That's outstanding.
One of my favorite scenes outside of Lucas Oil Stadium back.
Now I feel insignificant giving him a $5 bill every once in a while. That's big time, man.
You got to be hired.
That's big time.
For the Coach K celebration there in the 2015 national title. Again, Kyle Nenderup coming up at 9. We'll talk a little high school hoops with him as boys sectional play starts tonight. James Boyd, let me flip this on you. The position that has the least amount of need for the Colts this offseason.
Wide receiver.
Wow. Say that out loud.
I know. It really, does your heart good, KB, to not worry about the wide receivers too much this offseason. But I would seriously say it's a wide receiver. I mean, if I had to pick another position, perhaps I'd go D-line, but even then they have some question marks there. I know you don't have questions in interior defensive line, and you do have some big pieces coming back in Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner and others and Kwity Paye, but the wide receiver room I feel really good about. I think that Josh Downs is a future star. I think that Michael Pittman Jr. will have a bounce-back year as long as his back is okay. And then Alec Pierce had a breakout season, and if you get anything from A.D. Mitchell, you're okay.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice group that as a total room produces for you, and they're consistent. You know what you're going to get with Michael Pittman, and hopefully he's healthy all year long because he battled through so many injuries this past year. I agree with you. I think Josh Downs is a star in the making. We've seen what Alec Pierce can do to stretch the field a little bit. But I want to ask you, KB, what kind of progression do you see for Josh Downs this particular offseason to next year? Because this would be the year you would really think he would really find himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty established, to be honest. I think he is.
Is there a higher place for him to go?
I think he is a nice potential 100-catch guy, and I know
that's
that
high praise.
Certainly, but I think he has that ability out of the slot. I know he mentioned to us last year during training camp, a few more bigger plays, and unfortunately he had James, you were right there with me when Nick Cross had the idiotic tackle on Josh Downs during practice that took Downs out for a month, and he missed the first 2 games, is that right?
Yes.
And fittingly, you started 0-2 without him. I think he's that type of player for you. I think I would agree with you, James, that it is the least position of need, but I do want to say, and Chris Bauer's probably rolling his eyes if he happens to be listening to this right now, but they still don't have the dog in that room. Like, you don't have.
You're looking for a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson or something just a little bit lower than that.
And I get there's probably only 10 or 12 teams around the league that have that type of wideout, but I think it's a very nice group. I do. I think it's a group that, and I said it to Chris last week when he joined us, of I'm not asking you about wideout. I do think there is some nice depth to that room. But man, oh boy, just that absolute alpha. Just the 3rd and 8, game on the line, week 1. What does C.J. Stroud do? The ball placement's going to be right here. Nico Collins, can you make a play with blanket coverage? That type of guy, which, again, you're probably nitpicking a little bit when you consider the needs. But that exercise for me, I feel like I do it kind of annually exiting the combine, rank the needs. And I found myself doing that positionally, 1 through 10, 1 through 11. I found myself having a very difficult time separating the needs. I don't think there's that big of a gap between 1 on the list and 7 on the list. For example, I had defensive tackle kind of low. And then I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Yes, you have Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, but they're both age 30 and older.
And there's not a lot of depth there.
And you rotate a lot there. Mm-hmm. So who are you passing the torch to at that position? I had that kind of low. I had offensive line a little bit lower, and I'm like, well, this could be the biggest offensive line overhaul the Colts have had in an offseason. So I don't know if you, A, James, have done that exercise, or B, have looked at the needs this offseason and felt that of, I struggle with separating them in a very significant manner. Yeah, I mean, I think safety and tight end are probably clearly in that upper echelon, but I could talk myself into a lot of the needs being higher on the list than I had them, or even some being a little bit lower.
I would agree with that. And I also think that it comes down to this idea of close, which I'll drive myself crazy over. It's like, how close are they if we look at so many different team needs and they kind of overlap and they kind of don't? And then, what's the gap between, okay, if you improve in this position group, are you that much better? But to me, in a roundabout way, the biggest need, and I know it's a cop-out answer for positional need, is quarterback. Figure that out. We can talk about everything else, but I think when we talk about the gaps between good teams, great teams, bad teams, mediocre teams, it's usually the guy under center. And so I'm very curious to see. Obviously, we know that Sam Darnold is most likely going to hit the free agency market. I wouldn't expect him to consider Indianapolis because they have to pay a lot of money to get him, number one, and he want to come in and win the job. But as we get to closer to next week, could we see the Colts go out and try to get somebody on that in that first wave when it comes to free agent quarterbacks that sort of decides that position? Because to me, everything is a domino effect from there. Now, other positions, other decisions can be made before then.
And Stafford wasn't a domino.
Exactly.
Stafford stayed in.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see.
More on that on the other side. Franchise tag deadline day in the NFL. What should Colts fans be keeping an eye on? And it is a loaded night of hoops in the state. Much more on that. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, Mark Dykton here on a Tuesday morning. DriveHubler.com studio. It is the Fan Morning Show.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Let's go a little four-pack to senior night tomorrow inside of Hinkle Fieldhouse. It is Butler Xavier. We brought up a few minutes ago the Duke, Wisconsin national title game inside of Lucas Oil Stadium from 2015. Let's go back to 2010. Let's go a game before Butler and Duke in that national title. Who did Butler beat in the semifinal in 2010? Low-scoring game, prominent NBA player.
Bulldog fans will know that.
Currently still in the NBA. Played for Michigan State in that game. Gordon Hayward, Shelvin Mack. Very good. Who did Butler beat in the 2010 semifinal? We'll go there. Kyle Netterup going to join us coming up at 9. Boys sectional play begins. Kevin Bowen, Jeff Ricker, James Boyd, Mark Dykton on the 1s and 2s. James Boyd, Dane Brugler's latest mock drafts has me interested.
Yeah. Colston Loveland is the tight end out of
14. I think it's worth pointing out. Not a trade back.
Not a trade back. He is the pick, and so I think it's always a little.
Did he have Warren going before that pick?
I'm checking to see right now where my guy had him going, and actually, we just had my piece drop as well. I never know what goes on at the Athletic, and I work there. But looking at yes, he had Tyler Warren go to number 9 to the New Orleans Saints, and then Colston Loveland 14 to the Colts. And what he said was, connecting the Colts with a tight end here is far from original, but it makes a lot of sense. Loveland has the pass-catching athleticism that will make him an immediate asset for whoever is playing quarterback in Indianapolis next season. Quote, for whoever is playing quarterback in Indianapolis next season, KB.
Yeah, certainly not a ringing endorsement of where you're at from Anthony Richardson's side of it. Boy, the Loveland hype seems to be building. And, we had Matt Miller, draft analyst from ESPN, on to close out the show yesterday. He threw in, was it Mason Taylor, the LSU tight end? I believe he threw him in as a first-round grade. So he had 3 tight ends as a first-round grade. I think he said 7 are of starter variety. And, again, that is a question that I think you have to acknowledge if you're the Colts. Where is the depth at tight end? How do you view that depth? And then where's the scarcity at some of those other positions? And how do you view that at number 14 overall?
It's interesting because we know that Warren didn't wow everybody at the Combine, but his body of work is so amazing. I was looking at it yesterday. KB, he accounted in one way or another for 49% of Michigan's offense this past year.
Warren had the 17-catch game against USC. For those that, didn't watch a whole lot of Penn State, whether they watched, maybe the Big Ten title game or certainly one of those playoff games.
Yeah, for Penn State.
I was struck by how much they moved him around.
Yeah.
I think they have given an NFL offense you want to do Wildcat with him? You can do that. You want to inline him? You can do that. You want to split him out? You can do that. Hell, there were snaps he lined up as a running back. I found myself as a Notre Dame fan being borderline psychotic in the short yardage situations when, in a happy way, when they didn't have Warren lined up in some exotic manner. I was like, dude, I don't know if Notre Dame can tackle the guy.
Take him out of the game. He was terrific.
Right. They kind of, at times, handcuffed him, I thought, a little bit with that. So, and then in Loveland's case, I think some of the appeal there, and James pointed this out, maybe more of the actual receiver at tight end.
Yes.
And then also you have to factor in, he had us throwing him the ball at Michigan. That quarterback play was horrific this past season. And so, his numbers are not going to be Warren's numbers, frankly.
You're saying it was not J.J. McCarthy-like?
No, it was not that.
No, that's hilarious. It's just funny that Kevin talked about it like it was a crime scene. Horrific.
It's still a miracle that they beat Ohio State, given that level. Did you watch the Indiana game? Their inability to, accomplish the forward pass was, brought me back to whatever.
I will
1928.
Say, real quick, one thing to keep in mind with Colston Loveland is that he had shoulder surgery, I believe, January 29th. And it was a major surgery. And from what he told us at the Combine, he can't absorb contact for about 6 months. And that will put him at the end of August, right around there, or the end of July, rather. So, it's a risk to take as far as the transition. I don't think it's a long-term issue. It's just, Jeff, when you think about tight ends and guys you want to make immediate impacts, he won't be able to do that physically because he's still recovering from off-season shoulder surgery.
Which makes you wonder what the second half of his season looks like, because he's going to have to work to get into football shape, and then he's going to have to get into the offense and ingratiated with all those kinds of things. So it sets the development back a little bit. But long-term, from what I understood talking to people last week, it's not going to be a long-term issue. So I think you just say That's a guy who probably has compare it to a sprained ankle in the third week of camp.
I mean, he used to ride rodeo when he was a kid, so I think he's a tough guy. Kind of give up rodeo when he kept growing. I don't know if you really ride bulls at that height, but I also think that football is just a little bit more lucrative than the rodeo lifestyle. But he seems like a tough
Am I
kid.
imagining things, or did we used to have a bull riding experience over at Cadillac Ranch downtown?
This is before
One
my
of those
time.
mechanical bulls?
Is that imagination? All of a sudden, I'm picturing my friend Holton Whitaker on it, and it didn't go well.
Was it a night for you where maybe it's not quite clear, a
Oh,
little fuzzy?
That's probably
Is that what
fair-
happened? Mark, can you clear that up?
That's probably a fair statement. Hell, it might have been the night of Butler, Michigan State in the 2010 semifinal. Mark Dykton gave away that 4-pack. All I remember late in that game was Draymond. It was an ugly possession, and how Butler was able to stave off one final defensive effort there as they punched their ticket to certainly one of the games that I'll never forget in Butler Duke in that national title game. Colin Nenrip coming up in 10. Anything franchise tag deadline you guys care about for today so far?
The domino, I suppose, though, I don't think Minnesota's going to tag Sam Darnold. I think they want to re-sign him. Maybe Trey Smith at right tackle.
Yeah,
for
Trey
the,
Smith,
for the
Kansas City. It
Chiefs.
sounds like, again, T. Higgins with Cincinnati for the second year in a row. On the Minnesota front, I think one thing to keep an eye on, I know it's not as sexy as the Sam Darnold name, but do they use the tag on Byron Murphy at corner? If not, then Murphy now is added to a cornerback group that, again, has some nice depth to it. So that would be an area that I'm watching.
Well, Kevin, here's the interesting thing, too. When you look at defensive backs, whether it's a safety, whether it's a cornerback, between the draft, which is thought to be a little deep this year at those positions, and what might be coming out on the free agent market, there could be a lot to choose from. And a lot of, do you want to go with rookies and have a smaller impact to your salary cap situation? You want to probably bring in one or two veteran guys for this defense that can step in and get it done right now. But there should be a lot to choose from.
Jeremiah, thank you. Jeremiah, I've been tossed from the mechanical bull at Cadillac Ranch a few times in the past.
So maybe it was a fuzzy night for you.
Well, no. I mean, no.
you
I
remember,
was-
but
yeah.
you don't quite.
Crystal clear.
You remember,
I
but
know a
not
vivid
quite.
imagery.
No, now
of
it's
it.
vivid.
Thank you, Jeremiah, on that. Jeremiah and my friend Holton shaking hands here on the old Cadillac Ranch. Yeah, I think, and this kind of gets into discussion we had a little bit earlier in the show of, okay, what is a vet need, what's a free agent need, and what's a draft need? And what positions are both? I think the secondary
Is both, right?
it would be both.
I agree.
I look at double dipping on the back end. So, again, today, franchise tag deadline coming up. We'll see the trickle-down effect off of that. Still got to get to an I Gotta Know segment from Mark Dykton and Kyle Nenrip coming up on the other side. It is the Fan Morning Show here on a Tuesday, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Thank you again to Rick Carlisle. If you missed that, podcast will be up shortly. Busy night of hoops. Kind of that is par for the course. Tuesdays this time of year. Again, Purdue at 7 o'clock on Peacock. Pacers 7 o'clock over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse with the Rockets. Purdue has got Rutgers tonight. Probably one of the more disappointing teams, honestly, in college basketball this season with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper Jr. And then 9 o'clock, late one tonight, Indiana and Oregon. That is FS1, and that is probably, I don't know, the two hottest teams in the Big Ten. Maybe Michigan State would qualify, but two of the hotter teams so far, or as of late here in the Big Ten.
Indiana's won 4 out of 5. Oregon's won 5 in a row. They've been shooting the lights out of the basketball. During this 5-game win streak, I think one of their guards shooting 60% from three-point range.
To the Payless Liquors hotline we go, and we talk about a busy night of hoops. We also mean sectional boys action getting underway. A little birdie did tell me that I think it was maybe over the weekend that our next guest was putting on his referee outfits. I heard Jeffrey Anderson high knees. I heard maybe a moment or two of Teddy Valentine. Kyle Neddenrip, am I on to something here?
Yeah, man, that's yeah, hopefully that's not getting out there too much because I'm not a very good ref. So, but yeah, I am helping out with the rec league. It's interesting to get it from that perspective for sure. Maybe I'll write about that at some point.
Look at that. The 8th grade rec league over Brownsburg. Kyle Neddenrip, what else can the man do for us here from a local standpoint? Obviously a busy night, Kyle, coming up, boys sectional, but I want to start with just the absolute tragic news from over the weekend. And I thought your piece on Mason Alexander certainly let many of us get to know someone that clearly meant a whole lot to the HSC and the Fishers community. So you don't get into covering high school sports in any way, shape, or form to think you're going to be writing those pieces, Kyle, but in a way that I don't want to say thank you for that at all in such a tragic moment. I did think you did a very, very nice job in just letting us into who exactly Mason Alexander was.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, Mason was everything hopefully wrote about him was definitely how I felt, definitely how a lot of other people feel. He was a shining star. I couldn't wait to see, what he was going to do at Pitt. But even beyond that, he was just, a couple of years ago, or it's probably been, about 2 years ago, we sat at the end of the HSC football field after practice one day, and he had told me a little bit about the story before, but we just sat there and he kind of laid out his life story. Lost his dad, which would have been about 10 years ago now. Quit football for a while. That was when he was a young, he was 8 years old at the time, and he and it was just really touching. I remember telling him after our interview, is like, man, I appreciate you, telling your whole story. And, he came back to football, obviously, in 7th grade. And, and I talked to his mom and his brother and, just people around him. And, I've talked to him several times over the years since then. And, when you get that news, and I heard late Saturday night, probably only an hour and a half or 2 hours after it happened, and just couldn't believe it, and was hoping to wake up and hear that something was wrong with what I'd heard, and because he's really is one of those guys that you just knew he was gonna, even if football or something would happen to him, it just seemed like he was destined to do something greater, and had a great story to tell. And I watched his interview with his first interview with Pitt was only 3 days before that. And, man, and to see him stand up there, and he talked for about 6 minutes, but you could just feel the positivity and confidence, and it's just so sad. And, I know that, the community there, even beyond HSC, but, the football community, the people who know him, I saw a lot of the posts from other opposing players, and traded a couple texts with people he knew and that are high school kids now, and it's just everyone's just stunned. No one has anything but great things to say about Mason. He just really was a genuine person. And went back and I was watching some of the videos from our super team shoots the last couple of years, and he was funny. He was genuine. I can't say enough good things about him, and I just feel so bad for his family, his mom, and just whatever we can do, hopefully, to help them out, and I don't know what that is. Hopefully we'll know more in the next few days, maybe what we can do as a community to help them. But yeah, he was the real deal for sure.
Obviously, it's hard to transition from that. And Kyle, I know HSE will be in action on Friday. They get the first round bye in sectionals, and tonight there's a huge game in Carmel for Westfield and Fishers. Top 5 matchup. I've seen Fishers this year. They look unbeatable, but this is the time of year where things get crazy. So what are you looking forward to the most about that matchup in particular? And also, could you smuggle me in? I went to buy a ticket, and I was like, what is going on,
Sold
man?
out.
I got to pull some strings to get in. But no, in all seriousness.
Statistician for the night.
Yeah,
right
if
here,
you need some help
Mendenhall.
on the the ones and twos, I got you.
I'm kind of worried now too. I better double check I've got my spot secured. But yeah, I mean, it'll be fun tonight. I mean, this sectional is always a blast. It's always I was going back every year. I would go back and look at that Gary Harris shot when they beat North Central many years ago. But that's kind of sums up what this sectional is like. And I think Fishers, Westfield had played them really tough the last meeting they had with each other. They were ahead of them by 15 points in the second half. I know Fishers felt like they didn't play as well as they could. In Westfield, I've seen them too, and they are, they can get going, and they'll definitely be a challenge. This is a team, that I don't think people outside of Westfield really expected them to be this good this year. But I covered their game against Mount Vernon last week, and they really play well together as a team. It's a team that truly is kind of greater than the sum of its parts. So I would say they're gonna it'll be fun. I mean, I expect Fishers will get through and win this round and probably get through the sectional. But I'm just looking forward to seeing how do they match up? How does Westfield shoot? Their strength is really shooting from the outside, and they can spread you out. And then Durante Morton's good at getting downhill and finding those guys too. And Jalen Malone, Drew Hafner is a really good shooter for Westfield. But I feel like Fishers probably has the experience, the pedigree that they're obviously not going to be shrink from the moment, I would say, after winning state last year and everything they've done this year. So looking forward to see that game, and also the Noblesville Carmel game too. Should be interesting. I never would count Carmel out, even with that injury, unfortunately, to Alex Kudo really kind of hampered their chances. But Noblesville, a really good team there as well on the other side of the bracket, and they're a team that was right there last year with Fishers, lost by 2 in the sectional championship. So it's going to be a great sectional there at Carmel tonight, starting tonight.
I'll say this real quick, and I'll throw it to Kevin. But if you cannot get in, if they don't have the seat for Kyle Neddenrep, we riot. So you just let me know, and I'll get my pitchfork.
Carmel student section should carry him in on
Well, if you're going to go that far,
Exactly.
then make sure he gets you one too.
No,
right?
no. Kyle does it for all the right reasons. I'm just joking. I got a million games to watch tonight, anyways. I'm sure I'll run into him again. But seriously, Kyle, brother, you are getting in.
Jim Inskeep, you've heard the threat.
There it is.
From James Boyd.
Kyle, Jeff Rickard here. So many great stories, so many great teams. You were talking about that Carmel sectional tonight, or district tonight. What's the one team out there that's kind of flying under the radar that you think might be peaking at just this right time as we get into tournament play that's going to scare everybody?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking Class 4A, I mean, there are a lot of, it's a good year for a lot of teams. I think probably the success of Fishers and just the sort of the overall dominance of Fishers sort of makes you think like there's no one else that's going to win it. And that's fair because they are that good. And when they're playing their best, I'm not sure anybody can beat them. It's just one of those teams that's pretty unique. And, if they can get through the sectional, we probably need to start writing about, where their overall legacy sort of stands up over time. But, I would say, a couple teams to watch, Jeffersonville from down south, they are a team I think that would match up with Fishers now that they're fully healthy with, Trey Singleton. He missed the early part of the season with the foot injury, but he's back and playing really well. And they have two guys, Michael Cooper and P.J. Douglas, who are seniors, both going to Wright State, who are different type of players. Cooper can really, really shoot it and, handles the ball well. Douglas is more of just kind of an all-around, good guard who can shoot, but also will do the dirty work and, plays great defense. They're a team. They're 17-5, but some of those losses came while Singleton was out or not fully healthy yet. But they, with the big man, they've got a chance, I think, to do some damage. I would say, one of the big storylines too is can Greenfield Central get through and win a sectional? They have not done it since 1998. I think they're playing well at the right time, and they have the ultimate weapon with Braylon Mullins at that. Who's I think probably a no doubt front runner for Mr. Basketball at this point. But they have a couple teams in that sectional too that are playing really well, in Anderson and Mount Vernon, and that won't be easy. They'll only have to beat one of those two teams, and Mount Vernon and Anderson will most likely play in the semifinal round. But all three of those teams are really playing well at the right time, I would say. Another team out there is Avon. Avon is playing well. 20-win team. They are hosting the sectional. It's a 5-teamer, and all those teams are good. Including you got Ben Davis in there, obviously been to the state finals the last couple of years. But Avon's a team, I think, veteran team that, I think, I don't know if they're flying under the radar necessarily, but just overall have had a really good season. So there's a lot of, it's a year where it's a really good senior class. So you've got a lot of teams that are pretty veteran and experienced. But like I said earlier, I think just the overall dominance of Fishers maybe has blotted some of that out, just because people sort of assume, that Fishers is going to go on and win the whole thing this year. So, but yeah, there's really, it's a good year. Geography, what you have Crown Point up in the north is a good team. Warsaw, Northridge up there in the north. New Albany will give Jeffersonville, I think, if they play each other, some resistance, I would say. So it's a year where you got a lot of good teams sort of spread out around the state.
I'm going to guess it's year 18 for Kyle Nennerup on the beat. Is that right?
Yes, I think we figured that out last time I was on. I'm not very good at math, but I think it's 18.
We are beyond lucky to have him on the high school front. Kyle Nennerup from the Stars with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. We've covered a lot of 4A. Let's go with A, 2A, and 3A, Kyle. Most wide open class of those three would be what?
I would say 2A. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday over text, but I think 2A is probably the maybe not the class that has this super dominant team that sticks out. I think Park Heritage, which is ranked number 3, they were close last year. They lost to Brownstown Central in the semi-state championship. They were one game away there from making the state finals, and they have a lot of guys back. Rich Shelsky, his son Trey, really good player for them, but a very balanced team. Their losses have mostly come to 3A and 4A schools. I think they lost to Linton Stockton early, but other than that, they have not lost to a 2A school. But I've seen South Ripley play. I've seen obviously Wapahani's ranked number 1. They made it to the state finals last year. But there's Fort Wayne Lures is 18-6, but again they play a really tough schedule. They're a very talented team out of Fort Wayne, so you can never count them out either. But 2A's, I think there's just a lot of teams in there, and then 3A to me is just brutal. I would say the way they've restructured the class is you dropped about 20 teams down from 4A, including Cathedral, Addicts, and New Pal, who are all loaded teams. Those are all, state championship caliber teams. New Pal just beat, Warren Central. They've knocked off a lot of, 4A teams this season. They beat Guerin Catholic handily a couple of weeks ago, beat Lawrence North a few weeks ago. And then Cathedral, I think, would be a contender in 4A for sure. And Addicts would too. Both of those teams have been traditionally powers in 4A. So, those teams will probably play on Friday, and that could determine a lot of things. They will play. I don't think there's any doubt they will play on Friday at Shortridge. So that will be a dynamite game as well. But yeah, that 3A, you go through the list. Guerin's very good. Brownstown Central has come back even without Jack Benner and been really good. And they were a 2A team last year. So a lot of these teams weren't even in 3A last year. South Bend St. Joe was, and they made it to the state finals, and they have a ton of guys back too. So that class is going to be really fun to watch. And I do think 1A is also pretty wide open. Clay City, I went down and saw them a couple times, and they're ranked number 1, and they have 10 seniors on their team. And this is really a school that really supports its basketball, and I think they're going to be a handful. They do have a tough sectional with Bloomfield in there as well, and Blake Neal, who scores about 27 points a game. So that'll be an interesting one. But a lot of teams in 1A, Hauser, Orleans, a lot of these smaller communities that are Clinton Prairie, which hasn't won a sectional since the 80s, is a contender. So a lot of these schools that are smaller towns that maybe have a chance to get through this year. So that'll be a fun class also.
Kyle, we'll end with this. And as always, thank you for the time. You brought up the Gary Harris shot from whatever that was now, 12, 13 years ago. I think back to also at the Mill, what Eric Gordon did as a sophomore to Carmel in the fourth quarter of that sectional game. I'll never forget that. The best sectional moment in your 18 years on the beat, non-Gary Harris division, is what?
Man, that I would have to go through my Rolodex again. There was one year at Tech. It might have been. It might have been that same year or really close to that time where all of the games went down to the wire. But I will say, and from a standpoint of, kind of a sectional that turned out to be, just a huge, disappointment in a lot of ways was the 2020 sectional. That was a great sectional at Lawrence Central. I was there every night of it. It was, close games down to the wire. And then, of course, COVID happened after that, and we lost a lot of people who were at that sectional. And that's always one that will stand out to me for a lot of reasons, But yeah, I mean, you remember all the great moments and things that, happen over the years. But that's I should do a story about that. I maybe have to go through and remember a lot of these great things that have happened. But the most fun from a more generic standpoint is just these rivals who know each other so well, and it's the best week of the season in my opinion, just because there's so many rivalry games and teams that know each other, players that know each other, and they all get together and knock each other out. So that's sort of the fun of the sectional week.
Well, count me in as one that would read that piece, and I believe James Boyd, you in the last 10 minutes have figured out a way to get in the building tonight with Kyle Nedner at the Carmel?
Yes. Shout out to Ray Mattingly from Twitter. Shot me a DM and say, hey, I got a ticket. You don't,
He's charging you $100 to get in the building tonight?
No, it's literally, what I was thinking, wow, I'm going to upcharge, but no, he sent it to me for free, and I told him I'll pay you. And so Ray Mattingly, if I ever seen you in person, man, I owe you.
Let's go, Ray.
I know, man. And then people always tell me, oh, just use your athletic credential to get in. I don't like doing that. I like to pay to get in, support the school, do it the right way. And my life is great anyways. I don't need, the handouts. But Kyle, I'm serious, I will probably be sitting next to you at the stat table tonight. Try to keep the stats for you if there's room. But in all seriousness, man, I'll see you tonight. And obviously, I won't bug you too much as you do your thing. Awesome. We'll see you there. And, it should be a great atmosphere. And, I'd say get there early because it's going to be packed. I know. But, enjoy.
Kyle Nedner, thank you, sir.
All right. You bet, guys. Thank you.
That is the great Kyle Nedner on the Payless Liquors hotline from the Indianapolis Star. I say this every time we have Kyle on, and I don't think it can be said enough. We're just so lucky as a community to have him. For a lot of people, that's what their current lives are about right now. I can think back to my high school memories and how much that meant to me at the time. And I get not maybe everybody is locked into, exactly what is going on in the high school sports scene, but when your life crosses into that kind of path, Kyle Nedner does it outstandingly well. So thank you to Kyle Nedner.
I knew we were going to be talking to Kyle this morning. I went back and looked at some of the great games in Indiana high school history from the past, and one that stuck out to me a little before all of our times here, but in 1995, something that was billed the game of the century. Ben Davis had Ahmad Bellamy get a buzzer beater, a three-pointer that gave the Giants a 2-point victory over number 5 Washington at Hinkle Fieldhouse.
I was going to say, that was a Hinkle.
Can you imagine at Hinkle?
Was that a Hinkle regional there?
It was.
I mean, this time of year I always encourage people, obviously, who might not be from the Indiana originally area. You get a chance to go out to Newcastle, check out, some of the big games in a few weeks, and also see the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, which I think is one of the coolest places in Indiana. They do it great. It is awesome. There's so much history there. I like to go and look at different players or coaches that I've, interacted with in my career as a high school sports reporter up in the region. And it's fun, man. I'm excited about tonight. I'm just like, you have no idea. I shot Ray Mattingly a message and say, this is the best gift I've received in a long time. Like, I don't care about Amazon gift cards at Christmas. Give me to a high school basketball game when it matters. And so that kind of reminds me of why I do what I do.
Amen to that. It is a fun night across the state. It's a busy night of hoops, not only on the high school ranks. We'll hit all of it here on the Morning Checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
All right, let's begin with the big club. That would be the Pacers back in action tonight. Not a lot of home games here in the month of March to start things off, as Gainbridge Fieldhouse will be busy with Big Ten tournament action, women and men. But the Pacers are inside of their home building tonight. It's the Rockets at 7 o'clock. And again, Houston played last night. They lost at Oklahoma City. They really didn't play a lot of their starters. Several of them were game-time decisions. So could they have been, holding them out for tonight? Rick Carlisle joined us earlier. He certainly posed that idea. The Pacers are favored by 3.5. It doesn't sound like Benedict Mathurin will give it a go in this one. Wrist, knee, Achilles ailments. This would be his third game miss. But nonetheless, if it is a healthy Rockets team, I think this is quite the challenge, guys. Pacers-Rockets, 7 o'clock tonight.
Kind of interesting. If you're the Rockets, do you want fresh guys playing against Oklahoma City, or on the second night of a back-to-back at Indiana, then do you want your fresh guys coming back?
Yeah, it is something that I was kind of confused when I saw last night.
Right.
The amount of game time decisions. I believe they're in one of those stretches of 3 games in 4 nights, and they, again, opted last night to sit a lot of their guys. So we'll see about Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, Alfred Sengun, Steven Adams, the Thompson brothers. So, and that is tonight, 7 o'clock inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Also at 7, Purdue and Rutgers from Mackey. Purdue is a big favorite in this one, 10.5 points. It is Caleb's first senior night for him. Purdue right now obviously just playing for seeding from a Big Ten tournament standpoint, avoiding having to play as the 5th seed. That would be obviously a 4-game stretch at the Big Ten tournament here in another week. So Purdue's got Rutgers tonight, Illinois on the road on Friday, and James Boyd out in Oregon tonight. You'll be getting home from the Eric Clark Activity Center late tonight when this one tips. That will be Indiana and Oregon, 9 o'clock on FS1. You surprised? Indiana 5.5-point underdog?
I'm not, mainly because of how well Oregon's been playing and they're on the road, and considering the time change, so that I think that factors in as well. But again, they're right in the mix, and as we talked about earlier throughout this show, you win tonight and you put yourself in a great position to be in the NCAA tournament, which is obviously what everyone wants to do, man. You want to get in the dance and see what happens, and for Mike Woodson, I know he wants to kind of end it on a more positive note than it started this season, where, every talk every week was, how long you're going to be here and what's going on with the team.
I think you lock up a bid with a win tonight. Now, again, what would that mean? Dayton, all that, that remains to be seen. But I think that's what's at stake for Indiana tonight. Nate Biddle, the Oregon big guy, has played really well in their recent win streak. So how, Umar Balo, Malik Renew defend him will certainly be a storyline for tonight. IU Indy, they get started in their conference tournament action. They'll try to make it to the Coliseum. They'll need to win 2 games to get to the semifinals over the state fairgrounds. Tonight they are at Wright State. They actually beat Wright State over the weekend, but now they will play over there in Ohio. And again, boys sectional action tonight.
Let's get it done. A lot of basketball tonight. I think I might go down to the field house and see what's going on with the Pacers, see if they can keep that rolling. And one thing to watch for that Oregon, you mentioned Biddle, 13-7 he's averaged during their 5-game winning streak.
Can stretch the floor a little bit.
Yeah.
If Balo's in the game, is he able to pull him away from the basket? And Mark Dykton, our 529s, are getting a nice boost tonight. Thank you to the All-Indiana Parlay. So far, we're 0 for 2, but that doesn't mean we won't be 1 for 3.
Again, keep the good vibes going. I don't know what you and Jeff are doing with these negative
after tonight.
connotations.
Right.
You
tell
just
them
said
again. Tell them
you're
again.
0 for 2.
Tell them
Yeah,
again.
that's okay. Every gambler has a rough patch, and then you get on the right side of it.
We are not on the 10 for $102 parlay. We're on the 10 for $62 parlay.
I think that's the safer one. So that includes Pacers on the money line, IU covering the 5.5, and then plus 5.5, and then Purdue minus 10.5. So that'll pay $10 equals $62.74.
I say this in all seriousness. Of all the ones we've done so far, this I feel like is the most realistic.
Oh, you just gave the kiss of death on that one, then, Kevin.
I don't believe it.
I still
jinxes.
remember Mark's greatest coup. It was like a 15-leg soccer parlay. You wanted all kinds of diaper money
hear
back
that
in the
side?
day.
That came a long way, yeah. That was actually like 3 legs and it was like $500. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Maybe that's what I need to do. I need to start throwing darts.
Ashley's never been happier to see you walk through the door after
Yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
How about an I Gotta Know, courtesy of Mark Dykton? We'll do that coming up on the other side. Our Jiffy Lube stat of the day we'll get to as well. Kevin Bowie, Jeff Ricker, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton right here. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Up on the podcast, Rick Carlisle from earlier, pretty expansive, I would say, on Jarris Walker and everything that's kind of gone into second year for Walker, the G League appearance for him yesterday as the Pacers take on the Rockets here coming up tonight. Kevin Bowen, Jeff Ricker, James Boyd. We'll get to a Mark Dykton. I got to know a bit of a historic Indiana stat to throw at you here for our Jiffy Lube stat of the day. Again, brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985. Now, I must preface by saying, obviously, the fifth year plays into this, and we're still in that for a lot of these college guys. A lot of these guys did benefit. Benefit's probably not the right word because certainly their experience was altered, but statistically, they have benefited from the COVID cycle. Trey Galloway, he is 27 points away from joining a club at IU of 1,000 points and 400 assists. Now, the names on that list, he would become the 7th IU player to ever reach those totals. You could probably go just last names on the list, but just to make sure we're all on the same page here, Damon Bailey, Quinn Buckner, Tom Coverdale, Yogi Ferrell, A.J. Guyton, Randy Whitman.
It's a good club to join.
I was going to say, and, again, not being from Indiana and learning about the legend of, Damon Bailey. Goodness gracious. And then also being from Illinois, and Quinn Buckner won 2 high school state championships out there. He was amazing. So that is a great list to be a part of.
You just want to be in that team photo, don't you, Kevin?
I'd be happy taking the photo, I think, if anything there. And again, but you got to acknowledge it. Trey certainly benefited from the fifth year to get to that 1,000-point total, but still, even nearing that number. And he obviously has played some pretty good basketball for Indiana down the stretch. Them and Oregon tonight. The Indiana boys have helped put Mike Woodson's bunch back on the right side of the bubble. And again, I'm a firm believer they win tonight. They are in the dance amidst potential chaos that could happen here coming up with conference tournament week here.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they respond to what will be probably the biggest game of their schedule. I'm here to end, obviously, Ohio State coming up after this, but this is a huge opportunity for them. And I'm also, we've seen some guys step up, but are we going to get like the, Mackenzie Mbako game? Or are we going to get the Ballo game? Or are we going to get someone that kind of, stops Oregon in their tracks early? Because in my opinion, Kevin, I think they have to make sure they stay attached because you're playing in a hostile environment. You're playing against a team that's hot. You don't want to, start too slow and sort of try to dig yourself back into it. I think they have to start fast and then kind of hang around and get to the fourth quarter. Or not fourth quarter, but the final minutes of the game, give yourself a chance to win.
Yeah, one thing to know about Oregon, they've had a nice season, but they actually have lost quite a few times at home. I thought they would benefit from the, hey, when you come out west, you struggle based off the time change and all of that. But they've actually lost 4 home games in the Big Ten. So opportunity here for Indiana. They are a 5.5-point underdog tonight. All right, we are now 1 full week into our new Fan Morning Show. And boys, I think I'm going to load management myself. I think I'm going to sit this out.
Oh, this soft generation.
Mm-hmm. Mark Dykton, you've got to put the feet to the fire. James Boyd, Jeff Rickard.
Boy. Here we go.
I got a no time with Mark Dykton.
Here we go.
He's got questions.
How about a game?
They've got answers.
Hey, I'm more of a cornhole man myself.
Sports, music, movies. What? High fashion.
That Hansel's so hot right now.
And everything in between.
You ever seen a foot with 4 toes?
It's time to get a glimpse into the mind of Mark Dykton.
Stop it, you're scaring me.
It's time for I Gotta Know.
Okay, you punk, I want a good, clean fight. Let's get it on.
Okay, well, Kevin pulls a Kyrie Irving and a Kawhi Leonard and just sits in the corner.
To be fair, Kyrie was in a lot of pain last
say,
night.
he
Let's be
legitimately
honest
hurt.
here.
That's true.
We got the bulk of the minutes
wow.
today, and it was good for the show.
That's okay. All right, so James and Jeff, I'm going to pose these questions to you just to give the listeners a little more, background into you guys. So, normally, I got to know we can spray to all fields. We go sports, movies, whatever, anything in between. I want to get to know the boys in front of me right now. So, Jeff and James, your worst or favorite childhood sports memory?
Worst or favorite?
What's one that just sticks in your memory? I remember exactly what I was doing then. It broke my heart, or I was Happy as hell.
Mine was when I got beamed in the
Yeah,
ass.
guys, you're sitting this out. What are you doing?
Beamed in the butt right by Eddie Hamilton of the fastball, and the stitches were on my right cheek.
What are you doing,
Then I
Kevin?
had to catch the next inning.
I would say one that is kind of unique and kind of brings it full circle. I played against Ben Moore in high school, and Ben Moore was a former Pacer, played at Bolingbrook. I played at Romeoville, and I remember he spent through the lane, and he went up, and I thought he was going to dunk on me, guys, and he did. He finger rolled it, and I was like, yes, I live to fight another day. Because we had a kid at my high school that got dunked on, and they created an entire mixtape out of it and walked around the school playing it in front of him. It was very tough, so I was glad to not get dunked on by Ben Moore.
Jeff?
First time as a teenager I ever raced a bike. I got dropped.
Oh.
Like 4 laps into a 20-lap criterium. But a week later, once I figured out that these guys were for real and they weren't playing around, I did get my first podium, and 2 weeks after that, I got my first win. So how about that?
How many sticks did you throw in the other people's spokes and just like make them fly?
Why you got to ask that question?
I'm just saying.
Why you got to ask that
You ain't
question?
cheating, you ain't trying, right? All right, the
Again,
worst.
Into the mind of Mark Dayton.
The worst job you've ever had.
Oh, this is a great one. Oh, easy.
Don't say this one.
I was a warehouse worker for a Lego company.
What?
Yes. I graduated college, and it was a summer. I was looking for a journalism job, and I was like, you know what? I need like full-time pay. 'Cause I just bought a car. So I went to work at a Lego warehouse by my house, and it was horrible. I thought I was going to be lifting these little boxes. There are so many like very blessed kids out there, a lot of privilege out there, because I was thinking to myself, who is buying all these Harry Potter castles that weigh 50 pounds? And I remember coming home from work, seriously, in sweat and tired, and my dad was like, that's why I told you to go to college, because I don't want you doing what I was doing for all these years. So it gave me a lot of perspective in all seriousness, and I remember thinking, I will never do this again. And I remember walking off that job one day when I got my first journalism job up in the region, and I felt like the man. It was amazing. But for 3 weeks, I was hard labor and not really pulling my weight because I'm too skinny to lift the boxes fast enough.
As a father of young kids, I just think of like Legos and just stepping on them in the middle of the night when I'm trying to get out the door for work. And so being in a Lego factory, that sounds like pure hell. Yeah. You don't know what
Scene
you're
from
stepping
Home
on.
Alone.
It was terrible. Terrible.
Jeff?
My first job in college, it was my first job, but in college, my first 2 summers, I worked on the railroad, on the chain gang, out there swinging a hammer and removing old spikes. And my dad had gotten me that job for the same exact reason that your dad did, James. He was like, I want you to know what real work is and what there are people that do every single day that work hard all day, every day. He said, I'll help you get this job, but you cannot quit. And so I did 2 summers of the railroad. And that's when I also realized, you know what? Holding a microphone, shooting a video for TV, maybe working on the radio, not that bad a deal.
You did quit at one point, though. You're not still there.
No, I mean, I finished up both summers, and then my 3rd year, I started working at a TV station.
Like, sorry, Dad. I am quitting, actually.
Oh, my dad was happy when I walked off
I know.
the job.
All right, favorite movie or TV show? This one, it doesn't matter when it's on, what part of the movie or show it's on, you're going to sit down and watch it.
Movie Paid in Full.
Ooh.
I enjoy that one
that's
a lot.
Good one.
I watch it anytime, any day. And then as far as show, I would say Shameless. I enjoy Shameless. It's chaotic, kind of reminds me
The
of my
UK version or the
family.
US version?
The US version.
Okay.
And it is very fun. And you can pick it up at any point and just laugh. And it hits some hard topics as well. So, yeah.
Big fan of Fiona.
There you go.
Jeff?
Nothing wrong with Fiona. But as far as TV series are concerned, I told you guys the other day, my son is going to be 17 years old in 2 weeks. And he said, Dad, what I really want is to just sit down and watch Breaking Bad with you. And Breaking Bad is one of my favorite shows.
That's
I think
a great
that's
one.
part of the reason he wants to watch. But also, it's everywhere on memes. Everything these kids know about TVs or movies is on memes these days. And as far as movies are concerned, the remote stops every single time Gladiator is on. I'll watch it every single time it comes up, which these days is about once a week.
Yeah. Have you seen Gladiator 2 yet?
No.
Okay. I haven't either. I was curious if it was good.
A lot of people have been telling me that maybe I don't need to.
I mean, The Wire's also. I feel
Yep.
like
I have
just
not watched The Wire
default.
yet. It's on my watch list, though.
Gotta watch it.
Okay, last but not least, we always wrap it up here. What are we watching? Any movies or shows you're currently watching you'd like to offer up as suggestions for people looking for something to watch?
Well, this is
we
great.
watched a ton of stuff over the week. We watch Nosferatu, we watched Longlegs, watched The Gorge, Righteous Gemstones, The Americas. The Dykton household is all of a sudden streaming like maniacs.
Yeah, I'm big into shows. So I would say Paradise on Hulu, just phenomenal.
I've heard nothing but good things
story.
about
I mean, I stayed up literally midnight, the last episode dropped. I stayed up to watch it last night / this morning, and made it into today's show. So I'm very proud of myself. The nap is calling my name after this. And I always say Severance on Apple TV. Just a brilliant, unique show. Nothing ever seen like it. So those are my 2 right now.
Severance is on my list. My wife and I just got done watching Succession again because she loves that.
Okay.
That to know. And last night I started watching season 3. It just came out of Reacher. Have you seen that?
Okay.
I like those books. I've always read those books.
Yeah.
And watched the first 2 seasons. Thought they did a real nice job. And the 3rd season starts off with a mind blower. So it's good.
Kevin, you have any suggestions? You can chime in now.
Running points in the Bowen household right now. Kate Hudson, very well done.
Is it funny?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's got some good sense of humor to it. I mean, I watch it and think about the Lakers and their ownership situation a whole lot. But yeah, pretty good on Netflix. I would say it's a good funny show, especially on nights that aren't tonight where it's hoops.
What's the subscription breakdown in the households? Because I will say this, and Mama, if you listen, I don't care. I carry my family with. They would not see any good show if I did not have a subscription to tell them to watch this. Like they just, and I think the main reason I go to work and why they're happy that I'm employed is because
share everything. So we've got most things at this point in time.
Disney Plus, Mark. Where we would be without it?
I'm sure Bluey is on as we
universe
speak.
Over there, right?
Certainly, we'd be horrific parents if we aren't already on that. One final time here. Busy night of hoops, and actually a busy deadline coming up in the NFL. Any impact to the Colts? We'll do it one final time here. Fan Morning Show.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Multiple screens are necessary tonight. I will say that I enjoy actually when one of the games in the 7 o'clock hour is on Peacock. Like right now, what I could do tonight multi-screen wise is you watch Pacers and then you can go Purdue Rutgers on Peacock. Then for the most part that game will probably end before Indiana Oregon start on FS1. But I never thought I'd be like, yeah, I enjoy the Peacock games, but it allows you to get like the second screen on the device and keep the FanDuel, because I still have the wired cable to get back to what we were discussing before the break. I'm a hardline guy. How many
screens do you have going, and how many different apps can you put up there?
I only have one TV, in the room. I'm not a multi-TV guy. Are you guys multi-TV in a room?
Yeah.
I'm not. I have one TV, but I do have my laptop, my phone, so occasionally I will pull out both and kind of get the setup going. And so either way, I'm always watching a game.
Football season or March Madness, I'll do the double TV. I grab the TV out of the closet and I set it up, and my wife's like, you are a degenerate, because it'd be like 8 games on at once.
No, but I think that's a holiday. I think I would push back against Ashley. Very nice. I enjoy my combos with Ashley, but no, I would push back against her. That's a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
He's creating marital strife this morning.
Yeah, I'll let her know.
I back you, Mark.
There was nothing better than when I was in college and just the stress of not paying attention in class because I'm watching a game. Oh, there's nothing like it. I still remember watching Big East tournament, Kemba Walker crossing Gary McGee over. I can picture the classroom I was in, Ernie Pyle Journalism School. I can picture it. I was at luckily, it was one of the classrooms, and I say this as I start my class at IU next week, one of the classrooms with a computer at the desk. So, sadly, that's what I was watching. And I also remember this. Shout out to Ryan Bowen. This was back in the day when you didn't have the True TV, and now March Madness. I mean, you could literally have, to Mark's point, you could have 4 TVs set up to 4 different channels. This was back when you didn't have 4, and my brother and I would stream some of them on our laptops, but they were on a delay from the scoreboard on the TV. Oh.
So hear me out on this.
Yeah.
What would Ryan Bowen do? He'd throw the Post-it note up on the TV. Do you respect or do you call it psychotic?
I respect.
I respect
that.
Okay,
Thank you.
I respect.
I was nervous for a second there.
No, I am all in on that.
I thought it was borderline psychotic, probably by whatever. I won't go there. But anyways, Post-it notes on the top line of the TV to block out the scores, and then boom, stream the games on the laptop.
You got to enjoy it, man. I remember getting yelled at in my world religion class because I was on my phone. And mind you, this is a lecture hall with like 500 people. I was on my phone watching this game, and the lecturer goes, "Hey, you," and I'm thinking it's 500 people in here. Like, there's no way they're talking to me, and they were talking to me. Like, you pay attention. I was like, you know what, Lord, forgive me, but this basketball is very enticing.
The
right
Lord
now.
provided you with great entertainment.
Look, man,
you should be appreciating that.
I'm a church goer. I'm a church watcher, but church is also on the hardwood sometimes.
So in my office, going back to when I was hosting Game Night on ESPN all the time, I've got the 4 big screen TVs up in my office. So for tournament time, that's outstanding. But for the most part, I just hang out with the boys and my wife in the other room with the big screen TV. So there are occasions, especially football Sundays, NCAA tournament. It's fun to go do that. But
busy nights here again. Pacers, Rockets, 7 o'clock. Purdue, Rutgers at 7. And IU and Oregon at 9 out west. Obviously, boys sectional. And we've talked about it throughout the morning. NFL franchise tag. Bless you, Mark. NFL franchise tag deadline 4 o'clock today. James Boyd, anything you care about from a Colts perspective?
Not necessarily. I'm a bit selfish in that regard because I don't necessarily want to be watching the clock go to 4 p.m. I remember last year at this time, it was all about like, man, are they going to tag Pittman and, prepping some things and, reaching out to anybody behind the scenes with perspective. And so this time around, I think it'll be a lot quieter on the Colts front. But I do expect there to be perhaps more to talk about for us and more fireworks come this time next week when the official legal tampering period opens up for free agency.
I think 12th is when it all gets going, right, Kevin?
Officially, yeah. And again, I mean that's
you got the legal tampering.
That's a real loose term, as James knows.
Yeah.
Even though the Colts haven't been the most active participant in the Monday-Tuesday, this would be next week, in the Monday-Tuesday legal tampering period, that's when a lot of the agreed to terms you see. And again, this is probably a conversation for tomorrow and the upcoming days. If the words are going to lead to different actions from Chris Ballard, then Monday and Tuesday, James Boyd and I are going to be pretty busy.
Oh, yes.
If indeed these words are different actions. We haven't been very busy.
What do you expect?
Well, I mean,
it's hard to say, honestly.
Again, you have some people, Jeff, that says, why would I ever believe anything that comes out of Chris Ballard's mouth with how he's acted in 8 years? And then others would say, now, wait a minute. Remember, last week at the Combine, I read the email from listener Kevin. He was like, as much as I thought Ballard didn't deserve a 6th, 7th, and 8th year, I do hear different things. And if I remove myself from what do I think Chris Ballard deserves from a job standpoint, I do hear different words. Now, how all that will play out remains to be seen. So, again, Monday, Tuesday, that's when things will ramp up. Thank you to Rick Carlisle. Joined us on game day. That will be up on the podcast. Thank you to Kyle, Ned, and Rip. We are lucky to have him in our community. Boys, we will do it again tomorrow, recapping a whole lot of hoops. So signing off on this Tuesday, again, 7 o'clock tonight. Pacers, Rockets, our coverage, 6:30, these airwaves. Purdue, Rutgers at 7. Indiana, Oregon at 9. Kevin Bowen, Jeff Ricker, James Boyd, Mark Dykton. This is the Fan Morning Show right here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.